In the heart of Chicago's darkest empire, a pregnant woman fights for survival while the city's most dangerous man prepares to burn everything down for her. This is the story of Elena Voss, a woman who walked into hell as a victim and emerged as a queen. Stay until the end, hit that like button, and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story travels. The fluorescent lights of Chicago Memorial's emergency room flickered like dying stars, casting shadows that stretched and twisted across blood-streaked linoleum. It was the kind of October night when the wind came off Lake Michigan with teeth, rattling windows and sending trash skittering down empty streets. Most people had the sense to stay inside. Most people weren't bleeding out in the back of a taxi. Elena Voss hit the automatic doors at 11:47 p.m., supported by a cab driver who looked like he'd aged 10 years in the 20-minute drive from the south side. Her coat, expensive cashmere, now ruined, hung open to reveal a pale blue dress soaked dark from the waist down. Blood dripped from her fingertips, leaving a trail across the threshold. "Help!" The cab driver's voice cracked. "Somebody help her!" Two nurses looked up from their station. The younger one, a woman named Jessica, who'd been on shift for 9 hours and had seen everything from gunshot wounds to overdoses, went pale. "Get a gurney!" she snapped at an orderly, already moving. "Now!" Elena's knees buckled. The cab driver caught her, his hands shaking. She got in my cab and said to drive, said the baby." "How far along?" Jessica was beside them now, fingers finding Elena's pulse. Weak, too weak. 7 months. Elena's voice was barely a whisper, her accent carrying the faint music of somewhere else. Maybe Eastern Europe, maybe just exhaustion. "Please, the baby." They got her onto the gurney. Jessica fired questions while they moved, wheels squeaking against the floor. "What happened? Were you in an accident? Did someone hurt you?" Elena's eyes rolled back. Her lips moved, forming words that didn't quite make it to sound. "Stay with me." Jessica squeezed her hand. "What's your name?" "Elena." Her eyelids fluttered. "Elena Voss." "Okay, Elena. Who should we call? Husband? Family?" For a moment, Elena seemed to focus. Her fingers tightened on Jessica's wrist with surprising strength. When she spoke, her voice carried a weight that made Jessica's skin prickle. "Raphael Moretti." The name landed like a grenade. Jessica's hand stilled. Behind her, the orderly pushing the gurney actually stumbled. Even the cab driver went quiet. Everyone in Chicago knew that name. "You're sure?" Jessica kept her voice steady, professional. "That's who you want us to—" "Tell him." Elena's eyes locked on hers, clear for just a second. "Tell him I tried to run. Tell him they found me." Then she was gone, consciousness slipping away like water through fingers. They hit the trauma bay at a run. Dr. Marcus Webb, chief of emergency medicine, took one look at the patient and started barking orders. IV lines, blood work, ultrasound. The room became controlled chaos, a dozen hands working in practiced synchronization. Jessica stepped back, pulling off her gloves. Her supervisor, a gray-haired nurse named Carol, caught her eye and jerked her head toward the hallway. "Did she really say—" "Yeah." Jessica's voice dropped. "Should I call?" Carol stared through the window at Elena, pale as death on the table. "We have to. It's her emergency contact. You know what he is. I know what happens to people who don't do what Raphael Moretti expects." Carol pulled out her phone with hands that weren't quite steady. "I've got kids, Jess. I'm making the call." The number was unlisted, of course. But Carol had worked Chicago ERs for 30 years. She knew people who knew people. 3 calls and 2 transfers later, a voice answered. Male, cold, efficient. "Who is this?" "This is Carol Martinez, head nurse at Chicago Memorial Hospital. I'm calling about Elena Voss. Is she alive?" The question came so fast it nearly cut her off. Carol swallowed. "Yes, barely. She's in critical condition. She gave your employer's name as her emergency contact." Silence. Then, "Don't let her die. We're coming." The line went dead. Carol lowered the phone slowly. Jessica was watching her, eyes wide. "What did he say?" That they're coming. Carol glanced at the clock. Get security up here, quietly. And tell Dr. Webb he's about to have a very complicated night. Raphael Moretti was in the meeting when his phone buzzed. The conference room occupied the top floor of a building in the Loop that officially housed an import-export business. Unofficially, it was the nerve center of an organization that moved money, information, and occasionally people through channels the law couldn't touch. 8 men sat around the table, all of them powerful in their own right. None of them would have dreamed of interrupting Raphael during a negotiation. But Vincent DeLuca, who'd been Raphael's right hand for 15 years, watched his boss's face change as he read the message. Watched the color drain from olive skin that had seen everything from war zones to boardroom battles without flinching. Raphael stood. The conversation died mid-sentence. We're done. His voice carried no inflection, but everyone in the room felt the temperature drop. Vincent, with me. The rest of you, clear the schedule, all of it. He was out the door before anyone could respond. Vincent caught up in the hallway, his shorter frame working to match Raphael's long strides. What happened? Elena. That one word answered everything and nothing. Vincent's jaw tightened. He'd known Elena Voss for 2 years, since before she'd been Elena Voss, back when she was just Elena Kozlov, a translator who'd walked into Raphael's office to negotiate a contract and walked out having negotiated her way into his life instead. Where is she? Chicago Memorial, critical condition. Raphael's hand was steady as he called the elevator, but Vincent knew him well enough to see the violence coiled beneath the surface. Get Marcus and Tony, full detail. I want the hospital locked down in 20 minutes. Raphael. Vincent kept his voice low as they stepped into the elevator. If she's at Chicago Memorial, that means, I know what it means. The doors slid shut. Raphael's reflection stared back at him from the polished steel. 6'2", dark hair graying at the temples, a face that could have been handsome if it weren't so carefully empty. He'd built an empire on that emptiness, on the ability to make decisions without the weakness of emotion. But his hands were shaking. He pressed them flat against his thighs, watching the floor numbers descend. How long since we heard from her? Vincent didn't need to check his phone. 17 hours. 17 hours since Elena had left their apartment in the Gold Coast, dressed for a charity luncheon and smiling that small, private smile she got when she thought he wasn't looking. 17 hours since Raphael had kissed her goodbye, one hand resting briefly on the curve of her belly, where their daughter grew. He took her. Raphael's voice was barely a whisper. Voss took her and handed her over to Kozlov's people. We don't know that. Yes, we do. The elevator reached the parking garage. Raphael's car, a black Mercedes S-Class that cost more than most houses, waited in its reserved spot. Marcus and Tony were already there, 2 more pieces of the machine that kept Raphael alive in a business where survival was never guaranteed. Raphael slid behind the wheel. Vincent took the passenger seat without asking, already pulling up a map on his phone. 12 minutes if we push it. Raphael pulled out of the garage doing 60. The Mercedes hit Michigan Avenue like a bullet, weaving through late-night traffic with the confidence of a man who'd never worried about traffic laws. Behind them, a second car followed. Marcus and Tony, plus 2 more men Raphael trusted with his life. Call ahead, Raphael said, his voice flat and controlled again. I want her room cleared. Private security only. No visitors, no questions. The hospital's going to fight that. Let them. Vincent made the call. Raphael drove, his mind working through possibilities with the cold precision that had made him wealthy and kept him breathing. Elena had been careful. They'd both been careful. Her marriage to Caleb Voss was supposed to be protection, a legal shield, a connection to legitimate power that kept certain enemies at bay. But Caleb Voss was also a man drowning in debt and ambition. And when men like that got desperate, they made stupid choices, like selling their pregnant wives to settle accounts. The hospital appeared ahead, a massive complex of glass and steel lit up against the storm clouds. Raphael pulled into the emergency bay, ignoring the no parking signs. Let them tow it. Let them try. He was through the doors before Vincent could say a word. The ER had that particular quality of organized mayhem unique to big city hospitals on Friday nights. Crying children, shouting drunks, the steady beep and whir of machines keeping people alive. The admissions desk sat in the middle of it all, staffed by a tired-looking woman who barely glanced up as Raphael approached. Elena Voss. Where is she? Now the woman looked up. Her eyes widened slightly. Raphael had that effect on people, even when he wasn't trying. Are you family? I'm her emergency contact. I'll need to verify. Raphael placed both hands on the desk and leaned in. He didn't raise his voice, didn't have to. You called me 20 minutes ago and said not to let her die. I'm here. Where is she? The woman swallowed. Her fingers moved over the keyboard with shaking hands. Trauma Bay 3. But you can't just... Raphael was already walking. He found the bay without directions, following the sound of urgent voices and electronic monitors. Through the window, he could see her, small and still on a table too big, surrounded by people in scrubs working with controlled urgency. Elena. Her face was the color of old paper. An oxygen mask covered her nose and mouth, fogging with each shallow breath. IV lines ran into both arms. The monitor above her bed showed numbers that Raphael didn't need medical training to know were bad. A doctor looked up, caught sight of Raphael through the glass, and his expression tightened. He said something to a nurse, then stepped out into the hallway. Mr. Moretti. Not a question. I'm Dr. Webb. I'm treating your... He paused, clearly unsure of the relationship. How is she? Webb's professionalism slipped for just a second, revealing the exhaustion underneath. Honestly, lucky to be alive. She's lost a lot of blood. There's trauma to the abdomen, blunt force, we think. Maybe a beating. The baby is in distress. The words hit like punches. Raphael's hands curled into fists at his sides. Can you save them? We're trying, but I need to know what happened. Was it an accident, an assault? If there's internal bleeding, do your job, doctor. I'll do mine. Webb's jaw tightened, but he nodded. We're prepping her for surgery, emergency C-section. The baby's heart rate is dropping and we can't wait. How long? We're taking her now. As if on cue, the trauma bay doors burst open. Nurses wheeled Elena's gurney out, moving fast. Raphael caught a glimpse of her face as they passed, eyes closed, skin translucent, one hand falling limp over the side of the bed. He reached out and caught her fingers. They were cold. Elena, his voice cracked on her name. I'm here. You hear me? I'm here. No response. They wheeled her past him, through double doors marked authorized personnel only. Just before the doors closed, one of her fingers twitched against his palm. Then she was gone. Raphael stood in the empty hallway, still feeling the ghost of her hand in his. Behind him, Vincent approached carefully. Security's locked down the floor. I've got men on every exit. Raphael didn't answer. He was staring at his hand, at the smear of Elena's blood on his palm. Find out what happened. His voice was soft, almost gentle. Anyone who knew him would have recognized that as the most dangerous sound in the world. Every detail. I want video. I want witnesses. I want the name of every person who touched her before she got in that cab. We're already on it. Dominic's pulling traffic cams and I've got calls out to our people in the south side. If someone saw something, they saw. Raphael turned to face him. Kozlov's people aren't subtle. They wanted to send a message. To you? To Voss. But he made a mistake. Raphael's smile was thin and utterly without humor. He thought I wouldn't find out, or that I'd consider Elena expendable now that she married into legitimacy. Vincent had been with Raphael long enough to know where this was going. What do you want to do? What I should have done 6 months ago. Raphael pulled out his phone, scrolling to a contact he hadn't used in years. Caleb Voss ends tonight, but first I need to know exactly who gave the order. The phone rang 3 times before a gravelly voice answered. Moretti, didn't expect to hear from you. I need information, Sal, the kind that costs. Name it. Dmitry Kozlov's operation. Who's running point in Chicago? Who has authorization to make moves on civilian targets? A long pause. You're talking about starting a war. I'm talking about ending one. Raphael's voice was ice. Can you get me the names or not? Give me 2 hours. You have one. Raphael hung up. Down the hall, a nurse emerged from the surgical wing, spotted him, and quickly changed direction. Good. Everyone in this hospital should be afraid of him right now. Vincent cleared his throat. You know, if you go after Kozlov directly, the truce ended the moment they put their hands on her. And Voss? Raphael's expression went flat. Get me everything. Bank records, phone logs, surveillance footage. If he so much as sneezed in the wrong direction, I want to know about it. Vincent nodded and stepped away, already making calls. Raphael turned back to the surgical doors, willing them to open with news that wouldn't destroy him. Time crawled. He paced the hallway, ignoring the frightened looks from staff. 20 minutes became 30, 40, an hour. Finally, the doors swung open. Dr. Webb emerged, still in surgical scrubs, a mask hanging around his neck. The blood spattered on his gown made Raphael's heart stop. The baby? The words came out rough. Webb's face softened. She's alive. Premature, but breathing. We've got her in the NICU. The relief hit so hard, Raphael had to lock his knees to stay standing. And Elena? Critical but stable. The next 24 hours will tell us more. Webb pulled off his gloves. Mr. Moretti, whoever did this, they tried to kill her. She has fractures, internal bleeding, signs of prolonged trauma. This wasn't random. I know. If she hadn't gotten here when she did, but she did, Raphael's voice hardened. Because she's a fighter. When can I see her? She's in recovery. Another hour, maybe 2. Webb hesitated. The police will want to talk to her. The police will wait. I have to report this. Report it. Do whatever you have to do. Raphael met his eyes. But Elena doesn't talk to anyone until I say so. Am I clear? Webb looked like he wanted to argue. To his credit, he was smart enough not to. Recovery room 4. I'll have a nurse come get you. He left. Raphael sagged against the wall just for a moment, letting himself feel the weight of the last 2 hours. His daughter was alive. Elena was alive. That was all that mattered. Everything else was just blood and fire. Vincent reappeared, his face grim. Got something? You're not going to like it. Show me. They moved to a small consultation room. Vincent pulled out a laptop, angling the screen so Raphael could see. Security footage, grainy and black and white, showed a street corner on the south side. The timestamp read 3:47 p.m., 8 hours ago. A black SUV pulled up. 2 men got out, both with the thick builds and bad haircuts of professional muscle. They approached a building, residential, upscale but not showy, and one of them made a phone call. 30 seconds later, the building's front door opened. Caleb Voss stepped out. Raphael went very still. On screen, Caleb talked with the 2 men. They gestured to the SUV. Caleb checked his watch, then nodded. One of the men went inside. When he came out, he was dragging Elena. She fought. Even through the pixelated footage, Raphael could see her twisting, trying to pull free. Caleb said something to her, too far away for audio, but close enough that Raphael could see his mouth move. Then he turned and walked back into the building. The men shoved Elena into the SUV. It pulled away. Caleb stood on the sidewalk for a moment, checking his phone, before heading back inside. Raphael stared at the frozen frame, at the man who'd stood in a church 2 years ago and promised to protect Elena, now abandoning her to torture and death. There's more. Vincent clicked to another window. Bank records. Voss has been hemorrhaging money for months. Gambling debts, mostly. He owes the wrong people. Kozlov's people. Yeah, and 3 days ago he made a payment. Big one. Cleared most of his markers. Vincent's voice was tight with anger. He sold her, Raphael. He literally sold his pregnant wife to settle his debts. The laptop screen cracked under Raphael's hand. He'd crushed the corner without realizing it, the plastic splitting like bone. He pulled his hand back slowly, flexing fingers that wanted to wrap around Caleb Voss's throat. Where is he now? Home. The condo downtown. He's been there since 6 p.m. Ordered takeout, watched TV, went to bed at 10:30. Vincent's disgust was palpable. He thinks he got away with it. Raphael stood. Get Marcus and Tony. I want Voss picked up, quietly. No witnesses, no mistakes. What are you going to do with him? Nothing, yet. Raphael's smile was cold and sharp. First, I'm going to sit with Elena and my daughter. I'm going to watch them breathe and remind myself that they're alive. Then, When they're safe and stable, I'm going to show Mr. Voss exactly what happens to men who try to take what's mine." Vincent nodded and left to make arrangements. Raphael paced the small room, his mind already working through the logistics. Voss was the key, not just for revenge, but for information. Kozlov's Chicago operation had been quiet for years, content to stay in their lane as long as Raphael stayed in his. This attack broke that peace in a way that demanded response. But more than that, it was sloppy. Kozlov was old school, disciplined. He didn't authorize hits on pregnant women in broad daylight without a very good reason, which meant either Voss had lied to him about Elena or someone else was making moves without authorization. A nurse appeared at the door, Jessica, the same one who'd taken Elena's initial information. "Mr. Moretti? She's awake, asking for you." Raphael followed her through corridors that all looked the same, past rooms filled with the dying and the healing. Recovery Room 4 was at the end of the hall, guarded by two of his men who nodded as he approached. Inside, Elena looked impossibly small against the white sheets. Tubes and wires connected her to machines that beeped softly, tracking her return to the living. Her eyes were open, though, dark and alert, fixing on him the moment he entered. "Raphael." Her voice was a rasp, barely there. He crossed to her bedside, taking her hand carefully. "I'm here. The baby, she's alive. They have her in the NICU. She's small, but she's fighting." He brushed hair back from Elena's forehead, his touch gentle despite the violence still coiled in his chest, just like her mother. Tears slipped down Elena's cheeks. "He gave me to them, Caleb. He opened the door and let them take me. I know. They were going to kill me." Her fingers tightened on his. "They kept asking about you, your operations, your contacts, where you kept your money. When I wouldn't answer, Her breath hitched. "I thought I was going to die before I ever held her." Raphael leaned down, resting his forehead against hers. "You're not going to die. Neither is she. I promise you that." "What are you going to do?" It was the question he'd been waiting for, the one that would determine everything that came next. He pulled back enough to meet her eyes. "What I have to." Elena studied his face. She'd always been able to read him better than anyone, even when he thought he was unreadable. "He deserves worse than death." "I know." "Then give it to him." Her voice was still weak, but there was steel underneath. "Make him understand what he's done. Make sure he never hurts anyone like this again." Raphael kissed her hand. "Rest now. I'll take care of everything. I want to see her, our daughter, soon, when you're stronger." He stood, reluctant to leave, but knowing there was work to be done. "I'll have people outside your door. Nobody gets in without my say-so." "Raphael?" She caught his hand again. "Thank you for coming." The words hit harder than they should have, as if there was any universe where he wouldn't have moved heaven and earth to reach her. Always. He left her there, healing slowly under the sterile lights, and stepped back into the hallway where Vincent waited with a phone. "Marcus has Voss. They're taking him to the warehouse on Ashland." "Good." Raphael checked his watch. 2:30 a.m. "Have Sal's information come through yet?" 10 minutes ago. You were right. It was Kozlov's people. Brothers named Alexei and Mikhail Petrov. They run enforcement for the Chicago branch." "And they're working for?" "Kozlov himself, according to Sal. But get this. The hit was supposed to be clean. A message. They weren't supposed to touch her, just scare her. Make it clear you weren't untouchable." Raphael's jaw tightened. "Then why the beating?" "Because Voss told them she was carrying information. Told them she might know about a weapons shipment you have coming in next month." Vincent's voice dripped contempt. He lied to them to make sure they'd go hard, hoping they'd finish the job before anyone could trace it back to him. Smart. And stupid. Caleb Voss had tried to play both sides, clear his debts with Kozlov while permanently removing the wife who knew too much about his business dealings. He'd gambled that Raphael would either not find out or would blame Kozlov entirely. He'd gambled wrong. The Petrov brothers. Where are they? We're working on it. Last known location was a club in Ukrainian village. Find them. I want them alive. Raphael started walking toward the exit. And get someone to sit with Elena. Someone she trusts. What about you? I'm going to have a conversation with Mr. Voss. The warehouse district was dark at 3 a.m. Rows of industrial buildings hunched against the wind like sleeping giants. Raphael's Mercedes pulled up to a nondescript structure with boarded windows and a condemned sign that had been there for 6 years. Inside, it was clean, temperature-controlled, and soundproofed, perfect for difficult conversations. Marcus met him at his door, a big man with scarred knuckles and the eyes of someone who'd seen things he couldn't unsee. "He's in the back. Been crying for the last 20 minutes. "Good." Raphael followed him through the empty warehouse floor, past shipping containers and pallets, to a small office that had been converted for exactly this purpose. Caleb Voss sat in a chair bolted to the concrete floor, zip-tied at the wrists and ankles, his expensive suit rumpled and torn. He looked up when Raphael entered, and the fear in his eyes was so pure it was almost beautiful. "Raphael, thank God." The words tumbled out. "I don't know what's happening, but there's been a mistake. Your men, they just grabbed me off the street." Raphael pulled up a second chair and sat down across from him. Said nothing. Voss swallowed. Tried again. "Look, if this is about Elena, I can explain. She's been unstable lately, paranoid. I've been worried about her mental state. Stop talking." Voss's mouth snapped shut. Raphael studied him. Caleb Voss was 42, handsome in the way politicians and game show hosts were handsome, all gleaming teeth and practiced charm. He'd made his career putting people in prison, built a reputation as the DA who couldn't be bought. The press loved him. The mayor loved him. He had a brilliant future ahead. "I'm going to ask you one question," Raphael said quietly, "and your life depends on how you answer it. Do you understand?" Voss nodded frantically. "Why?" "I don't... Why did you sell your pregnant wife to men who wanted to torture her to death?" Raphael's voice never rose above conversational. "Money, fear, ambition. I want to understand what makes a man look at a woman carrying his child and decide she's worth less than clearing a debt." Voss's face crumpled. "It wasn't supposed to go like that. They said they just wanted to talk to her, to send you a message. You told them she had information about my operations." "I had to. They wanted..." He stopped, realizing his mistake. "You had to," Raphael repeated, "because if they thought she was useless, they'd come back to you for the debt. So you made sure they'd hurt her, made sure they'd consider her valuable enough to take seriously." He leaned forward. "Tell me, Caleb, when did you decide your wife's life was an acceptable price for your gambling problem?" "I didn't want her dead." Tears streamed down Voss's face now. "I just needed more time. I thought she could handle it. She's tougher than she looks. She's..." Raphael hit him. It wasn't a wild swing or a rage-filled blow. It was precise, calculated, a short jab that split Voss's lip and snapped his head back. Blood sprayed across his shirt. "Don't!" Raphael's voice was ice. "Don't you dare talk about her strength like you didn't try to destroy it," Voss sobbed. "Please, I'm sorry. I'll do anything." "You're right. You will." Raphael stood, pulling out his phone. "You're going to give me every detail of your arrangement with Kozlov's people. Names, dates, amounts, every conversation, every payment, every person you sold out to cover your debts." "I can't. They'll kill me." "They're welcome to try." Raphael smiled. "But first, I'm going to make sure you can't hurt anyone ever again. And I'm not going to use violence, Caleb. I'm going to use the law." Voss's expression shifted from terror to confusion. "What?" "You're the district attorney. You know how it works." Raphael gestured to Marcus, who stepped forward with a laptop. "You're going to help us build a case against yourself. Financial records, communications, evidence of corruption. By the time we're done, you're going to be the mastermind of a criminal conspiracy so vast, so well documented, that you'll spend the rest of your life in the prisons you helped fill." You can't. I already have your bank records. I have video of you handing Elena over. I have testimony from people you owe money to, people you've threatened, people you've bribed. Raphael's voice was almost gentle. "All I need now is your cooperation to tie it all together. Make it airtight." "And if I refuse?" Raphael leaned in close enough that Voss could see the absolute emptiness in his eyes. "Then I'll let you live anyway. I'll make sure you're free to go, clean and clear. And then I'll make a phone call to Dmitry Kozlov and explain how you tried to use his organization to murder my unborn child without authorization." He paused. "What do you think he'll do to you when he finds out you lied to his people? When he realizes you've brought federal attention down on his operation?" The color drained from Voss's face. Exactly. So you can work with me, go to prison, and live. Or you can refuse, and I'll make sure Kozlov knows everything before sunrise." Raphael straightened. "Your choice." It took Voss less than 30 seconds to break completely. By the time dawn broke over Chicago, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Raphael had everything he needed. Voss had talked for 3 hours straight, each confession more damning than the last. Wire fraud, racketeering, evidence tampering. The list went on and on. Raphael stood in the warehouse office, watching through the window as Marcus loaded Voss into a car. They'd drop him at a police station in 2 hours. Anonymous tip already called in. By noon, every news channel in Chicago would be running the story. His phone buzzed. "Vincent. We found the Petrov brothers." "Where?" "O'Hare. They're trying to catch a flight to Toronto." A pause. "You want us to intercept?" Raphael thought about Elena's face when she'd said, "Make him understand." Thought about his daughter fighting for every breath in an incubator because 2 men had decided her mother was worth less than a message. "No, let them board." "Boss, let them get comfortable. Let them think they got away with it." Raphael's smile was terrible. "Then make a call to Kozlov. Tell him I want a meeting, tonight, and tell him to bring his nephews." "You're giving them to Kozlov?" "He authorized a hit on a pregnant woman without bothering to verify the intelligence. His men went rogue and turned it into a torture session. That's sloppy, Vincent. That's the kind of mistake that ends operations." Raphael headed for the exit. Kozlov's old school. He'll want to clean up his own mess. And he'll do it in a way that makes sure everyone knows what happens when you break the rules. And you get to keep your hands clean. Exactly. I'm not starting a war over 2 soldiers who didn't follow orders, but I am making sure everyone understands that Elena is untouchable now. He climbed into the Mercedes. "What's her status?" "Stable, awake, asking for you." "And the baby?" "Holding her own. They say she might be able to come off the ventilator tomorrow." Raphael let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. "I'm heading back to the hospital. Arrange the meeting with Kozlov for tonight, somewhere neutral. And Vincent?" "Yeah?" "Thank you." The line went quiet for a moment. Then, "She's family, boss. We all look out for family." Raphael hung up and pointed the car toward Chicago Memorial, toward the 2 people who'd become his entire world without him quite realizing when it had happened. The city slid past, already waking up for another day. Commuters flooding the trains, coffee shops opening, life continuing like the night's violence had never happened. But it had happened, and before this was over, Chicago's underworld would know that Raphael Moretti's mercy had limits, that some lines, once crossed, could never be uncrossed. As he pulled into the hospital parking lot, his phone lit up with a notification. News alert, prominent D, a arrested in massive corruption probe. Raphael allowed himself a small smile. The fire was just beginning. The hospital room smelled like antiseptic and fear. Elena stared at the ceiling tiles, counting the tiny holes in each one because it was easier than thinking about the alternative. 47 in the tile directly above her bed. She'd counted 3 times to be sure. Raphael had left an hour ago to handle what he called loose ends. She knew what that meant, had known from the moment she'd seen his face in the recovery room, that particular emptiness that said someone was about to die badly. A soft knock interrupted her counting. The door opened to reveal a woman in her mid-50s, gray hair pulled back in a neat bun, wearing slacks and a sweater that looked expensive but understated. She carried herself with the kind of quiet confidence Elena associated with people who'd survived things they didn't talk about. "Mrs. Voss?" The woman's voice was warm but professional. "I'm Catherine Ross. Mr. Moretti asked me to sit with you." Elena tried to push herself up and immediately regretted it. Pain lanced through her abdomen, sharp enough to make her gasp. Catherine was beside her in seconds, hands gentle but firm as she helped adjust the pillows. "Easy. You just had major surgery. Your body needs time." "I need to see my daughter." "And you will. The doctors want to make sure you're stable first. Catherine settled into the chair beside the bed. Mr. Moretti told me you're stubborn. I can see he wasn't exaggerating. Despite everything, Elena almost smiled. You know Raphael well? Well enough. I've worked for his organization for 12 years. Security consulting mostly. Sometimes I handle situations that require a gentler touch than Marcus or Tony can provide. She pulled out a tablet. I'm here to make sure you're safe and comfortable. Whatever you need. What Elena needed was her baby in her arms and her husband in the ground. But she didn't say that out loud. How bad is it? Outside this room, I mean. The news. Catherine's expression shifted slightly. You haven't seen. They took my phone. Hospital policy during recovery. Probably for the best. But Catherine turned the tablet around anyway, showing Elena the headline. District Attorney Caleb Voss arrested in sweeping corruption scandal. Elena read the article with growing disbelief. Wire fraud, racketeering, evidence tampering. The list of charges ran for 3 paragraphs. They'd found bank accounts in the Cayman Islands, communications with known criminals. A paper trail that painted Caleb not just as corrupt, but as one of the architects of organized crime in Chicago. This is... Elena looked up at Catherine. This is Raphael's work. Mr. Moretti doesn't do anything halfway. But how? In one night? Catherine took the tablet back. Your husband was careless. He kept records of everything, probably thought it made him smart. Raphael's people just had to know where to look, she paused, and encouraged the right person to show them. Elena understood. Raphael had broken Caleb. Completely. Made him give up everything in exchange for staying alive long enough to face trial. It was worse than death. Caleb's entire identity had been built on his reputation as the incorruptible DA. Now that was ashes, and he'd have to watch it burn from inside a cell. He deserves it. Elena's voice was flat. He handed me over to them like I was property, like our baby didn't matter. I know what they did to you. Catherine's tone was gentle. And I'm sorry. No one should have to go through that. But I did, and I survived. Elena met her eyes. Now I need to know what comes next. Rest, recovery, bonding with your daughter when the doctors clear it. That's not what I mean. Elena struggled to sit up straighter, ignoring the pain. Caleb's arrest will cause problems. The people he worked with, the people he owed money to, they're going to want answers, and some of them are going to blame Raphael. Catherine studied her for a long moment. You're sharper than you look. I translated for organized crime syndicates for 5 years before I met Raphael. I know how these things work. Elena's fingers twisted in the blanket. Caleb was connected. His arrest is going to create a power vacuum. People will try to fill it. Mr. Moretti is aware. Is he prepared? Before Catherine could answer, the door opened again. This time it was Dr. Webb, looking tired but pleased. Good news, he said without preamble. Your daughter's off the ventilator. She's breathing on her own. The relief hit Elena like a physical blow. Can I see her? Not yet. You're still too weak to move, but we can arrange a video call if you'd like. Webb pulled out his phone. I took the liberty of setting it up already. Elena's hand shook as she took the phone. The screen showed a plastic incubator in the NICU, and inside it, impossibly tiny, wrapped in blankets that looked enormous against her frame, was her daughter. She had Raphael's dark hair and Elena's nose. Her eyes were closed, but her chest rose and fell with steady breaths. A nurse hovered nearby, checking monitors and making notes. She's beautiful, Elena whispered. She's a fighter. Came into this world at 29 weeks, and she's already breathing unassisted. That's remarkable. Webb smiled. Have you thought about a name? Elena hadn't. There'd been a list before. Names she and Caleb had discussed over dinner, written on a notepad stuck to the fridge. All of them felt wrong now. Sophia. The name came out of nowhere, settling into place like it had been waiting. Her name is Sophia. Sophia Voss? Sophia Moretti. Elena's voice was firm. She's Raphael's daughter. She should have his name. Webb didn't comment on the legality of that statement. He just nodded and made a note. I'll update the birth certificate. For now, keep resting. The more you heal, the sooner you can hold her. He left. Elena kept the phone, staring at Sophia's tiny face until her vision blurred with tears. Catherine's hand was warm on her shoulder. She's going to be fine. And so are you. I know. Elena wiped at her eyes. I keep thinking about what would have happened if I hadn't gotten away. If they'd killed me before I made it to that taxi. But you did get away. You survived. Because I got lucky. Because one of them got distracted long enough for me to run. Elena's voice cracked. That's not strength. That's just luck. Luck is surviving the first hit. Catherine's tone went hard. Strength is what you do after. And you crawled into a cab bleeding and pregnant and made sure you got to safety. You gave the ER Raphael's name knowing exactly what that would unleash. That's not luck, Elena. That's strategy. Elena looked at her. Really looked at her. Catherine's eyes held the kind of knowledge that only came from experience. You've been where I am. Different circumstances. Same feeling. Catherine settled back in her chair. I used to work in finance, had a good job, a husband, a normal life. Then my husband got involved with the wrong people, owed money he couldn't pay. They came to our house one night and made it very clear what would happen if he didn't settle up. What did you do? I liquidated everything we had and paid them off. Then I divorced him, took back my maiden name, and disappeared. Catherine's smile was thin. 6 months later, I met Mr. Moretti at a charity event. We got to talking and he offered me a job. Said he needed people who understood how civilians thought but could handle themselves in dangerous situations. Do you regret it, leaving your old life? Every day. Catherine's honesty was brutal. But I'm alive and I'm useful. That counts for something. Elena turned back to the phone screen, watching Sophia sleep. I don't want to be a victim anymore. Then don't be. It's not that simple. Isn't it? Catherine leaned forward. Right now, everyone thinks you're fragile, broken, someone to be protected and pitied. You can let them think that, or you can show them they're wrong. How? By paying attention, learning, making yourself valuable in ways that don't involve translation services. Catherine's voice dropped. Raphael cares about you. That's obvious. But in this world, caring isn't enough. You need to be someone he can trust to handle herself when things go sideways. Elena absorbed that. It made a cold kind of sense. You're saying I should join his organization. I'm saying you should stop thinking of yourself as separate from it. You're carrying his child. You're living under his protection. Whether you like it or not, you're already part of this world. Catherine stood. The question is whether you're going to be a passenger or a player. Before Elena could respond, her phone buzzed with a text. Not the hospital phone, her actual phone, which Catherine pulled from her bag and handed over. The message was from an unknown number. The baby is beautiful. It would be a shame if something happened to her. Elena's blood went cold. Catherine. One look at her face and Catherine was reading over her shoulder. Her expression went deadly. Stay here. Don't move. Don't open that door for anyone except me or Mr. Moretti. She was gone before Elena could argue, the door clicking shut behind her. Elena stared at the message, her heart hammering. Someone had gotten her number. Someone knew about Sophia. Someone was threatening her daughter. Her hand steadied as fury burned through the fear. She forwarded the message to Raphael, then called him. He answered on the first ring. Elena. Someone just threatened Sophia. The silence that followed was worse than shouting. When Raphael spoke again, his voice was so calm it raised the hair on her arms. Forward me the message. I already did. Good. Catherine's with you? She just left. Raphael, how did they get my number? How did they know? I don't know yet, but I will. The sound of a car door closing. I'm 10 minutes away. Don't leave that room. I'm not going anywhere, but Sophia, Vincent's already at the NICU. I had security on her the moment they took her off the ventilator. His voice softened slightly. She's safe, Elena. I promise. The line went dead. Elena sat in the hospital bed, staring at her phone, and felt something shift inside her. Catherine was right. She'd been thinking of herself as separate from Raphael's world, like she could somehow keep one foot in normalcy. But that was a fantasy. The moment she'd given the ER his name, she'd chosen a side. Now she needed to learn how to fight on it. 15 minutes later, Raphael walked through the door looking like he'd aged a decade. He crossed to her bedside without a word and pulled her into his arms, carefully, mindful of her injuries, but with enough force that she felt his heart racing against her cheek. "I'm sorry." His voice was rough. "This is my fault. I should have had better security on your information." "It's not your fault. It's whoever sent that message." Elena pulled back enough to see his face. "Do you know who it was?" "We're working on it. The number's a burner, but there are ways to trace those." He sat on the edge of the bed, still holding her hand. "Vincent's running point. If it's someone from Kozlov's organization making a move, it's not." Elena was surprised by her own certainty. Kozlov authorized a message, not a kill. His people went too far and he's going to clean that up himself. This is someone else. Someone who knows about Sophia, but isn't afraid to threaten her. Raphael studied her. "You've been thinking about this." "I don't have much else to do." Elena's grip tightened. "Catherine said I need to stop being a passenger. She's right. I need to understand how this works if I'm going to protect our daughter." "You don't need to "Yes, I do." Elena cut him off. "I can't just hide behind your protection forever, Raphael. Eventually someone's going to get through. And when they do, I need to know how to handle it." He was quiet for a long moment. Then, slowly, he nodded. "Okay, what do you want to know?" "Everything, but let's start with who benefits from threatening Sophia." Raphael's smile was grim. "You're thinking like a strategist already." He pulled out his phone, bringing up a diagram that looked like a family tree made by someone paranoid. "Chicago's organized crime has 3 major players. My organization, which handles high-end operations, money laundering, political connections, legitimate business fronts. Kozlov's people, who run the traditional rackets, drugs, protection, trafficking. And the Morellis." "Wait, Moretti is your name?" "It's a common name. These Morellis are distant cousins, maybe. We're not close." Raphael zoomed in on one section of the diagram. "They run the south side. Gambling, loan sharking, some construction rackets. We've stayed out of each other's way for years. Until now. Until Caleb's arrest." Raphael's jaw tightened. "See, your husband wasn't just dirty. He was useful. He made problems go away for a lot of people. With him gone, everyone's scrambling to cover their tracks. And they think you're responsible." "They know I'm responsible. I didn't exactly hide it." He met her eyes. "I wanted them to know." "Wanted everyone to understand what happens when someone hurts you." Elena's throat tightened. "That's why someone's threatening Sophia. They're trying to get leverage, make you back off. Or they're trying to start a war." Raphael stood, pacing to the window. "If I retaliate too hard, I look unstable. If I don't retaliate enough, I look weak. Either way, someone benefits." "Who?" Before he could answer, Vincent appeared in the doorway. His expression was carefully neutral, which Elena had learned meant bad news. "We traced the number," Vincent said. "You're not going to like it." "Tell me." "It's registered to a phone purchased 3 weeks ago in cash at a shop in Chinatown. Security footage shows the buyer, male, late 20s, wearing a delivery uniform." Vincent pulled up an image on his phone. "We ran facial recognition. His name is Danny Morelli, junior enforcer for the Southside crew." Raphael went very still. "You're sure?" "Positive. And there's more. Danny's brother Michael was one of the people Caleb put away 2 years ago. Fabricated evidence, perjured testimony, the whole thing was a setup to clear a case." "Let me guess. You found proof." "Caleb's files had everything. Michael Morelli was framed." Vincent's voice was carefully controlled. "And now that Caleb's arrested, all his old cases are getting reviewed. Michael's lawyer already filed for appeal." Elena understood immediately. So Danny blames Raphael for exposing his brother's innocence too late. If Caleb hadn't been arrested, Michael might have served the full sentence. "And died in prison," Vincent added. "He's got cancer, stage 4. The only reason he's getting out is because the case is falling apart." Raphael cursed softly. "So this isn't about power or territory. It's personal." "Gets worse." Vincent looked uncomfortable. "We just got word that someone hit 3 of our safe houses in the last hour. Coordinated strikes. They didn't take anything, just tagged the walls." "Tagged them with what?" "A message. You broke the rules, now we break you." The room went quiet. Elena watched Raphael process this, saw the moment he shifted from protective partner to something colder and more calculating. How many people know about Sophia? Raphael's voice was flat. Hospital staff, our people, and whoever's been watching the NICU. Vincent pulled up another image. Security footage from the hospital hallway. A man in scrubs, face partially hidden by a surgical mask, standing near the NICU entrance. This guy's been there for 3 hours. He's not on the staff list. Raphael moved fast. He was out the door before Elena could say a word, Vincent right behind him. Elena sat alone in the hospital bed, staring at the empty doorway. Her daughter was in danger. Raphael's organization was under attack, and she was stuck in a recovery room, useless. Catherine returned 5 minutes later, locking the door behind her. We've got a problem. I know. Vincent told us. Not that problem. A different one. Catherine's face was grim. I just got a call from one of our people inside the police department. They're planning a raid on Mr. Moretti's properties tomorrow morning. Every location we have on record. But they don't have evidence. They do now. Someone's been feeding them information. Detailed logs of operations, financial records, witness statements. Catherine sat down heavily. It's all fabricated, but it's good. Good enough to get warrants. Elena's mind raced. This is coordinated. The threat against Sophia, the attack on the safe houses, now the police raid. Someone's trying to dismantle Raphael's entire operation in one move. The Morellis don't have that kind of reach. No, but Caleb did. Elena grabbed her phone, pulling up the news article about his arrest. Look at the timing. He gets arrested, his cases start getting reviewed, and suddenly there's a coordinated attack on Raphael's organization. Catherine leaned in, reading over her shoulder. Then her eyes widened. You think Caleb set this up before he was arrested? Like a dead man's switch. I think he knew Raphael would come for him eventually, so he built a contingency plan. Elena's fingers flew across the screen, searching for more information. If Caleb goes down, he takes Raphael with him. Evidence gets released to the police, old grudges get activated, everything falls apart. That's brilliant and terrifying. Elena looked up. Where's Raphael now? NICU. He's moving Sophia to a private facility. Good. We need to... The lights went out. Emergency lighting kicked in a second later, bathing the room in red. Through the door, Elena could hear shouting, the sound of people running. Catherine was on her feet, gun in her hand. Stay down! What's happening? I don't know, but we're not waiting to find out. Catherine moved to the door, listening. Can you walk? Elena's abdomen screamed protest, but she swung her legs off the bed anyway. I can try. Good enough. Catherine helped her stand, supporting her weight. We're going to the NICU, slowly. If we see anyone who's not on our side, you let me handle it. They made it 3 steps before the door exploded inward. The man who came through was big, dressed in black tactical gear, face covered. He had a gun raised and pointed directly at Elena. Catherine moved like water. One shot, center mass. The man went down, but there were more behind him. Elena stumbled backward as Catherine fired again, her movements precise and controlled. 2 more down. But the hallway was filling with tactical teams, and they weren't hospital security. Back! Catherine grabbed Elena, pulling her toward the bathroom. It was a terrible defensive position, but it was the only option. They barely made it inside before bullets tore through the doorframe. Catherine slammed the door, jamming a chair under the handle. We're pinned. Elena's phone buzzed. Raphael. Where are you? She texted back with shaking hands. Room. Under attack. Catherine with me. The response was immediate. Hold on. 2 minutes. He's coming, Elena said. He won't make it in time. Catherine checked her ammunition. I've got maybe 20 rounds left. Then we need a different plan. Elena looked around the bathroom. Small window, too high to reach even if they could fit through it. Medical supplies in the cabinet, useless for defense. And a ventilation grate in the ceiling. Can you get up there? Elena pointed. Catherine followed her gaze. Maybe, but you can't. I don't need to. You get in the vents, circle around, hit them from behind. I'll stay here and keep them focused on this room. That's suicide. It's strategy. Elena met her eyes. Raphael taught me something. You don't win by being stronger. You win by being smarter. Catherine stared at her for a long second. Then she smiled, fierce and approving. You're going to be terrifying when you heal. She boosted herself up, removing the grate and pulling herself into the ventilation shaft. The last thing Elena saw was her feet disappearing into darkness. Then she was alone. The doorframe splintered under repeated kicks. Elena pressed herself against the wall, knowing it was useless but refusing to make it easy for them. The door gave way. A man came through, gun raised. He saw Elena, vulnerable and alone, and smiled behind his mask. Then the ceiling collapsed on him. Catherine dropped from the vent like an avenging angel, landing on the tactical team with both feet. Her gun barked 3 times and 3 men went down. The rest scattered, trying to regroup, but Raphael was already there. He came through the hallway like a storm, Marcus and Tony flanking him, all 3 of them armed and moving with the kind of precision that spoke of military training. The tactical team didn't stand a chance. It was over in 30 seconds. Raphael reached Elena first, his hands on her face, checking for injuries. Are you hurt? No, Sophia. Safe. Vincent has her. He pulled her against him and she felt him shaking. We need to move. The whole hospital's compromised. They got her into a wheelchair. Elena's legs had finally given out completely, and moved as a unit through corridors filled with chaos. Hospital staff huddled in rooms, patients looked terrified, and somewhere in the distance, police sirens wailed. The NICU was a fortress when they arrived. Vincent stood guard outside with 4 other men, all heavily armed. Inside, Sophia slept peacefully, unaware that the world was burning down around her. We've got a helicopter on the roof, Vincent reported. Private medical transport. We can have both of them at the safe house in 20 minutes. Raphael nodded. Do it! They lifted Sophia's incubator carefully, monitoring equipment and all, and began the move. Elena watched from her wheelchair, Catherine at her side. Who were they? Elena asked quietly. Mercenaries. Raphael's voice was ice. Professional contractors hired to look like a police raid. Someone paid a lot of money for this. The Morellis? Maybe. Or someone using them as cover. He knelt beside her wheelchair. Elena, this is going to get worse before it gets better. I need you somewhere safe while I handle it. No. He blinked. What? I said no. Elena's voice was steady, despite the pain radiating through her body. You send me away. I'm a target. Sophia's a target. We're better off where you can see us. You're injured. I'm healing, and I'm learning. She grabbed his hand. Catherine's been teaching me how to think strategically, how to read situations, how to be useful instead of helpless. I'm not asking to fight. I'm asking to be part of the solution. Raphael looked at Catherine, who shrugged. She's right. Isolated targets are easy targets. Besides, she's got good instincts. She just had major surgery. And I'll rest while I watch and learn, Elena insisted. But I'm not hiding, not anymore. Raphael studied her face for a long moment. Then slowly he nodded. Okay, but you do exactly what Catherine says, no arguments. Deal. They made it to the helicopter without further incident. The flight to Raphael's safe house, a compound north of the city, hidden behind gates and guards, took 18 minutes. By the time they landed, Sophia was crying lustily, demanding food and attention like she owned the world. Elena held her daughter for the first time in a bedroom that looked like a bunker with expensive furniture. Sophia was impossibly small in her arms, warm and alive and perfect. We're going to be okay, Elena whispered against Sophia's dark hair. I promise you that. No one's ever going to hurt you like they hurt me. Raphael stood in the doorway watching them. I'm going to burn Chicago down for you, both of you. I know. Elena looked up at him. But let's be smart about it. Burning things down is easy. Building something that lasts, that's harder. His smile was cold and sharp. Then let's build an empire. Outside, Chicago slept uneasily, unaware that its underworld was about to change forever. Unaware that a woman who'd walked into an ER dying was about to become the most dangerous player in the game. Elena Moretti was done being a victim. Now she was going to learn how to be a queen. The safe house sat on 40 acres of wooded land that looked peaceful during the day and absolutely terrifying at night. Elena discovered this at 3 in the morning when Sophia woke up screaming, and she carried her to the window, rocking her gently while watching shadows move between the trees. Guards. At least a dozen that she could see, probably more she couldn't. Raphael wasn't taking chances. Can't sleep? Catherine appeared in the doorway wearing pajamas and holding a cup of coffee that smelled strong enough to strip paint. She's hungry every 2 hours. Elena adjusted Sophia against her shoulder, wincing as the movement pulled at her stitches. The nurse said that's normal for preemies, but I feel like I haven't slept in a year. You haven't slept in 3 days. Catherine came closer, peering at Sophia's tiny face. Want me to take her for a bit? You need rest. I need to feed her first. Elena moved to the chair by the window, settling carefully. The doctors had cleared her to nurse despite the surgery, though every movement reminded her exactly how much damage her body had taken. How long have you been awake? Never went to sleep. Raphael called a meeting at midnight. It's still going. Elena looked up sharply. What kind of meeting? The kind where people decide who lives and who doesn't. Catherine's voice was matter of fact. Want me to fill you in, or would you rather pretend you don't know what your life looks like now? Fill me in. Catherine sat on the edge of the bed, cradling her coffee. The hit at the hospital wasn't random. It was too coordinated, too well-funded. Raphael's been running the numbers, and the mercenary team alone cost at least $2 million to hire and equip. The Morellis don't have that kind of money. No, but they have connections to people who do. Catherine pulled out her phone, showing Elena a grainy photo of a man in his 60s, silver-haired and expensively dressed. Antonio Morelli, head of the family. He's been in the game for 40 years, survived 3 federal investigations, and owns half the South Side through shell companies. Raphael said they stayed out of each other's way. They did. Past tense. Catherine swiped to another photo, this one showing a younger man, late 20s, sharp suit, cold eyes. This is Antonio's grandson, Marco. He's been pushing to expand north for years. Antonio always said no, didn't want the heat. But now with Caleb's arrest creating chaos, Marco's arguing it's the perfect time to make a move. Elena studied the photo while Sophia nursed. Marco Morelli had the look of someone who'd grown up with money and violence in equal measure. Dangerous combination. So Marco hired the mercenaries? That's the assumption, but here's where it gets complicated. Catherine showed her a third photo. Danny Morelli, the junior enforcer who'd sent the threatening text. Danny's not part of Marco's crew. He works for his uncle, Sal Morelli, who runs a smaller operation and has no love for Antonio's family. Different branches, different territories, lots of bad blood. Then why would Danny threaten Sophia? Because his brother Michael is dying in prison for a crime Caleb framed him for. Danny doesn't care about territory or power. He wants revenge on everyone involved. Catherine's expression darkened. He blames Raphael for exposing Caleb too late to save Michael. Never mind that Raphael had nothing to do with the original frame-up. Elena shifted Sophia to her other side, thinking. So we've got Marco trying to start a war for territory, and Danny trying to start one for revenge. Are they working together? Unknown. That's what Raphael's trying to figure out. Catherine checked her watch. The meeting should be wrapping up soon. He'll probably want to brief you himself. He doesn't have to. Yes, he does. You're not just his girlfriend anymore, Elena. You're the mother of his child. That makes you a player whether you want to be or not. Catherine's voice was gentle but firm. The question is whether you're going to be a passive player or an active one. Before Elena could respond, footsteps echoed in the hallway. Raphael appeared, looking exhausted. His shirt was rumpled, tie gone, and there were shadows under his eyes that hadn't been there 3 days ago. You're still awake, he said, moving to kiss Elena's forehead. So are you. What happened at the meeting? Raphael glanced at Catherine, who shrugged. I already briefed her on the basics. She deserves to know what she's in the middle of. I know. Raphael pulled up a chair, sitting close enough that his knee touched Elena's. We've identified 3 separate threats. Marco Morelli's expansion play, Danny Morelli's revenge vendetta, and something else we're still tracking down. Something else? The evidence that's being fed to the police. It's too detailed, too insider. Someone with access to my operations is feeding information to law enforcement. Raphael's jaw tightened. We have a leak. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Elena knew enough about organized crime to understand what that meant. A leak didn't just compromise operations, it destroyed trust, created paranoia, got people killed. Do you know who? We're narrowing it down. Vincent's running background checks on everyone who had access to the compromised information. It's a short list, but everyone on it has been with me for years. Raphael rubbed his face. I don't want to believe it's one of my own people. But you have to assume it is. Elena adjusted Sophia, who'd fallen asleep against her chest. What about Caleb? Could he have planted someone in your organization before all this started? Raphael's expression shifted. That's actually possible. He had 2 years to prepare. If he knew I'd eventually come for him, he could have bought someone's loyalty. Or found someone with a grudge, Catherine leaned forward. Have you had anyone recently passed over for promotion? Anyone who felt slighted or overlooked? Marcus handles personnel. I'll have him pull the records. Raphael stood, already reaching for his phone, then stopped. No, it's 4 a.m. This can wait 6 hours. Can it? Elena's voice was quiet. If the leak is feeding information in real time, every hour we wait gives them more chances to damage your operation. And every decision I make exhausted is a bad decision. Raphael knelt beside her chair, one hand resting on Sophia's back. I need to think clearly for this. That means sleep. Elena wanted to argue, but she could see the exhaustion etched into every line of his face. Okay, but first, tell me the plan. What happens next? Next, we meet with Antonio Morelli. Face-to-face, neutral ground. We find out if Marco's acting with his grandfather's blessing or if he's going rogue. Raphael's voice hardened. And if it's the latter, we offer Antonio a deal. He controls his grandson, we don't retaliate. And if he refuses? Then Marco becomes a lesson about what happens when you come after my family. The cold certainty in his voice should have frightened Elena. Instead, it steadied her. This was the man who'd stormed into a hospital and moved heaven and earth to save her. This was the man she'd chosen, knowingly or not, when she gave the ER his name. What about Danny? She asked. Danny's a different problem. His grief is real. His anger is justified, even if it's misdirected. We can't negotiate with that. Raphael stood, moving to the window. Vincent wants to handle him quietly. Make it look like an accident. But you don't want that. I don't know what I want. Raphael's reflection stared back at him from the glass. Kill him, and we validate his family's grievances. Let him live, and he keeps coming at us. There's no clean answer. Elena thought about that while Sophia slept against her heartbeat. What if we give him what he wants? Both Raphael and Catherine turned to look at her. Explain, Raphael said. Danny wants revenge for his brother. Michael's dying because he spent years in prison for a crime he didn't commit. Caleb took those years from him. Elena kept her voice steady. So we make sure everyone knows it. We don't just get Michael released. We make Caleb's betrayal public. Every detail, every lie. We turn Michael into a symbol of corruption exposed. That doesn't give Danny his brother back. No, but it gives Michael's suffering meaning, and it destroys Caleb more thoroughly than just sending him to prison ever could. Elena met Raphael's eyes. You said you wanted Caleb to understand what he'd done. This is how. We make him infamous for all the wrong reasons. Catherine let out a low whistle. That's ruthless. That's strategic. Elena's voice was firm. Danny's anger isn't really about us. It's about injustice. So we give him justice, publicly and completely. Maybe that's enough to satisfy him. Maybe it's not. But at least we tried something other than violence first. Raphael stared at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, he smiled. You've been thinking about this. I've had nothing but time to think. Vincent's not going to like it. He prefers permanent solutions. Vincent doesn't have to like it. He just has to execute it. Elena shifted Sophia to her shoulder, patting her back gently. I'm not saying we trust Danny or leave ourselves vulnerable, but we give him an off-ramp, a way to get what he really wants without more people dying. And if he takes the off-ramp and still comes after us, then you do what you have to do. But at least you'll know you tried. Elena stood carefully, cradling Sophia. I'm going to put her down. You should sleep. Raphael caught her hand as she passed. Elena, thank you. For what? For seeing options I didn't. He pulled her close, careful of Sophia between them. For being smarter than me. I'm not smarter. I'm just thinking differently. She kissed him softly. Get some rest. We'll need you sharp for whatever comes next. He let her go reluctantly. Catherine followed Elena to the nursery, a room that had been hastily converted with a crib, changing table, and enough security monitors to run a small prison. That was well played, Catherine said as Elena settled Sophia into the crib. You just positioned yourself as someone with strategic value, not just someone to protect. Was I that obvious? To me? Yes. To Raphael? Catherine smiled. He's too tired to see the manipulation. Tomorrow he'll realize what you did and he'll be impressed. Elena made sure Sophia's blanket was secure before turning to face Catherine. Is that what this is? Manipulation? It's survival, and it's smart. Catherine's voice was approving. You can't just be Raphael's girlfriend or his baby's mother in this world. You need to be valuable in your own right. Tonight you showed him you can think tactically. That's currency. I don't want to play games with him. You're not. You're adapting. Catherine moved to check the security monitors. Look, I know this is overwhelming. 3 days ago you were bleeding out in an ER. Now you're planning strategy in a safe house while your infant daughter sleeps 10 feet away from an arsenal. That's a hell of a transition. I don't have a choice. Everyone has choices. You're choosing to engage instead of retreat. That takes guts. Catherine pulled up a chair. Want some advice? Always. Don't try to be Raphael. Don't try to be Vincent or Marcus or any of the men in this organization. They're going to underestimate you because you're a woman, because you're injured, because you're new. Use that. Catherine's eyes were sharp. Let them think you're softer than you are. Then surprise them. Elena thought about the hospital bathroom, about holding position while Catherine flanked their attackers, about forwarding that threatening text to Raphael instead of panicking, about seeing patterns in the chaos that professional criminals had missed. I can do that, she said quietly. I know you can. That's why I'm investing time in you. Catherine stood. Get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be brutal. She left. Elena stood over Sophia's crib for a long moment, watching her daughter's tiny chest rise and fall. 3 days old and already caught up in a war she didn't understand. I'm going to make this world safe for you, Elena whispered, whatever it takes. Sleep came in fits and starts, interrupted by Sophia's feeding schedule and the constant awareness that armed men patrolled outside her door. When dawn finally broke, Elena gave up and carried Sophia downstairs, following the smell of coffee to a kitchen that looked like it belonged in a luxury home rather than a fortress. Raphael sat at the island with Vincent and Marcus, all 3 of them hunched over laptops and looking like they hadn't slept at all. Morning, Elena said, settling Sophia into a portable bassinet on the counter. 3 heads turned. Marcus actually smiled, which Elena had learned was rare. The princess is awake. Both princesses, Vincent corrected, standing to pour Elena coffee. How are you feeling? Sore, tired, ready to know what's happening. Elena accepted the coffee gratefully. Did you figure out the leak? Raphael exchanged glances with Vincent. We have a theory. One of our accountants, guy named Peter Chen, has been acting strange, missing meetings, nervous, making excuses. Marcus pulled his financials and found some interesting deposits. How interesting? 50,000 interesting. 3 payments over the last 2 months. Raphael pulled up a spreadsheet. The deposits trace back to a shell company that doesn't exist on paper, but has connections to a law firm that did work for Caleb Voss. Elena processed that. So Caleb bought him. How long has Peter worked for you? 8 years? Solid record? No red flags. Raphael's voice was tight with anger. He has access to everything. Financial records, property lists, personnel files. If he's been feeding information to Caleb, then to whoever Caleb set up as a contingency, we're completely exposed. Where's Peter now? Safe house in the suburbs. We picked him up an hour ago. Marcus cracked his knuckles, waiting for your word on how to handle it. Raphael's expression went cold. I want to talk to him first, find out what he gave up, who he's been talking to, what the endgame is. And then? Elena kept her voice neutral. Then we deal with the problem permanently. Elena sipped her coffee, thinking. Can I make a suggestion? Vincent raised an eyebrow. Sure. Before you kill him, use him. Elena set down her cup. If Peter's been feeding information to someone, that someone is expecting regular updates. What if we give them exactly what they're expecting, except we control the information now? Raphael went very still. You want to turn him. I want to use him as a weapon. Feed false information through Peter, see who acts on it. That tells us who's on the other end of the leak. Elena warmed to the idea. You could even use it to set a trap. Make them think you're vulnerable when you're actually waiting for them. Marcus whistled low. That's sneaky as hell. That's effective. Vincent was already typing on his laptop. We could feed them bad intel about your location, your schedule, your security gaps. When they move on it, we're ready. It's risky, Raphael said. If Peter tips them off that we flipped him, then we make sure he can't. Elena's voice was steady. You said you wanted to talk to him first, so talk. Make him understand that his only chance of survival is complete cooperation. Then put someone with him 24/7 to make sure he doesn't deviate from the script. Raphael studied her face. You've really been thinking about this. I've had a lot of time to think, and Catherine's been teaching me. Elena reached for Sophia as she started to fuss. Besides, you told me to be smart about this. Killing Peter is easy. Using him is harder but more valuable. Vincent, what do you think? Vincent closed his laptop. I think your girlfriend just became your best strategist. It's a good plan. Risky, but good. Marcus? The big man shrugged. I'm always down for a trap. Beats waiting for them to hit us again. Raphael stood, moving around the island to where Elena sat with Sophia. He kissed the top of her head gently. Okay, we do it your way, but I want you involved in the interrogation. Elena looked up sharply. What? You saw the play. You should see it through. Raphael's eyes were serious, and I want Peter to see who he put in danger. Want him to look at Sophia and understand exactly what his betrayal almost cost. That's psychological warfare. That's effective. Raphael echoed her earlier words. Catherine will be with you. If it gets too intense, you can leave, but I think you should be there. Elena thought about that. Thought about facing the man whose information had almost gotten her killed. About making him see Sophia, see what his choices had nearly destroyed. Okay, she said finally, but I need an hour to feed her and get ready. You have 2 hours. The meeting with Antonio Morelli isn't until this afternoon anyway. Raphael checked his watch. That gives us time to handle Peter first, then move on to bigger problems. The next hour passed in a blur of feeding Sophia, showering, and trying to find clothes that didn't aggravate her healing incision. Catherine appeared with a selection that looked professional but comfortable. Black pants, a soft sweater, low boots. You want to look put together but not intimidating, Catherine explained. Let Raphael be intimidating. You be the human cost. They arrived at the suburban safe house just after 10. It looked like any other house on the street. Neat lawn, 2-car garage, basketball hoop in the driveway. Inside, it was stripped down to essentials. Cameras in every corner, reinforced doors, and in the living room, Peter Chen sat handcuffed to a chair. He looked terrible. Mid-30s, Asian American, normally neat hair disheveled and eyes red from crying. When Elena walked in carrying Sophia, he actually flinched. Mr. Chen. Raphael's voice was conversational. Thank you for joining us. I didn't have a choice. Peter's voice shook. Your people broke into my apartment and dragged me here. True. But you did have a choice 8 weeks ago when you decided to sell information about my organization. Raphael sat down across from him. Want to tell me about that? Peter's eyes darted to Elena, to Sophia, then away. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't insult my intelligence. We have your bank records. We know about the deposits. We know you've been feeding information to someone connected to Caleb Voss. Raphael's voice hardened. What I don't know is why. Silence. Raphael leaned forward. You've worked for me for 8 years. I've paid you well, treated you fairly, never given you reason to fear for your safety. So why did you betray that? More silence. Then, quietly, my daughter. Elena felt something cold settle in her stomach. What about your daughter? Peter looked at her directly for the first time. She has leukemia. The treatments, they're experimental, not covered by insurance. I couldn't afford them. I was going to lose her. So you went to Caleb Voss for money? Raphael's tone was flat. I went to a lawyer I knew had connections, told him I needed help, that I had access to valuable information. He made some calls. A week later, someone contacted me with an offer. $50,000 for initial intel, more for ongoing reports. Peter's voice cracked. They told me it was just financial information, that they wanted to know about your business operations for competitive intelligence. I didn't know they were going to use it to try to kill my family? Raphael's voice was ice. What did you think was going to happen, Peter? You work for organized crime. You had to know that information about my operations wasn't going to be used for legitimate business. I thought maybe tax evasion or something. I didn't think murder. Peter was crying now. I have a 6-year-old daughter. She's sick. What was I supposed to do? Elena felt torn. Part of her understood the desperation of a parent trying to save their child. Part of her wanted to scream at this man whose choices had nearly killed her and Sophia both. You were supposed to come to me, Raphael said quietly. You were supposed to trust that I take care of my people. Instead, you sold me out and put everyone in this organization at risk. I'm sorry. Peter's voice was barely a whisper. I'm so sorry. Raphael stood, walking to the window. Sorry doesn't fix this. Sorry doesn't undo the information you gave them. Sorry doesn't bring back the security we've lost. I know. Do you? Raphael turned back. Do you understand that because of your information, a tactical team broke into a hospital and tried to kill Elena while she was recovering from surgery? That your intel almost orphaned a newborn baby? Peter looked at Sophia, fresh tears streaming down his face. I didn't know. They said it was just business intelligence. And you believed them because it was easier than facing what you were really doing. Elena's voice was steady despite the anger burning in her chest. You made a choice, Mr. Chen. A terrible choice. Now you have to live with the consequences. Are you going to kill me? Raphael smiled, cold and sharp. That depends on you. He laid out the plan then. The false information, the controlled leaks, the trap. Peter would continue his reports to his contact, but now every word would be scripted by Raphael's people. One deviation, one hint that he'd been compromised, and his daughter would grow up without a father. Do we have an understanding? Raphael asked. Peter nodded frantically. Yes, anything. Just please don't hurt my family. Your family? Raphael's laugh was bitter. I'm not the one who put your family at risk, Peter. You did that all by yourself. He gestured to Marcus. Get him set up in the basement. Full surveillance. I want someone on him at all times. They led Peter away. Elena stood in the empty living room, rocking Sophia gently, trying to process what she'd just witnessed. You okay? Raphael asked quietly. I don't know. Part of me feels bad for him. His daughter is sick, he was desperate, and part of you wants him to suffer for what he did. Yeah. Elena looked up at him. Does that make me a bad person? It makes you human. Raphael pulled her close, careful of Sophia between them. Peter made his choice. He could have come to me, could have asked for help. I would have paid for his daughter's treatment without a second thought. Instead, he went behind my back and nearly got you killed. Sympathy only goes so far. What happens to him after we're done using him? Raphael's expression was unreadable. That depends on how useful he is, and how much damage his information has already caused. Elena understood. Peter's life was borrowed time, contingent on his continued value. When that value ran out, so would Raphael's patience. We should go, Raphael said, checking his watch. The meeting with Antonio Morelli is in 2 hours. I want you there. At the meeting? Elena's surprise must have shown on her face. You're part of this now. And I want Antonio to see exactly what his grandson's ambitions have put at risk. Raphael's smile was grim. Besides, you're good at reading people. I want your assessment of whether he's being straight with us. They drove back to the main safe house in convoy, 3 cars moving in careful formation. Sophia slept through the entire trip, blissfully unaware that her mother was about to walk into a room with one of Chicago's most dangerous men. Catherine helped Elena prepare, choosing a different outfit this time. Elegant but understated, nothing that screamed wealth or weakness. You want to look like someone who belongs at that table, she explained. Not a victim, not a trophy. A partner. The meeting was set for a restaurant Raphael owned in the Loop, closed to the public for a private dinner. Antonio Morelli arrived exactly on time, flanked by two bodyguards who looked like they could bench press small cars. Antonio himself was smaller than Elena expected, maybe 5'8", slender, dressed in an immaculate suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. His silver hair was combed back, his face lined with age but his eyes sharp and assessing. He looked at Elena and Sofia, and his expression softened just slightly. "Raphael, I didn't realize this was a family dinner." "It's not," Raphael gestured to the table. "But I wanted you to see what your grandson put at risk when he decided to expand his territory." Antonio sat, his guards taking positions at the door. "My grandson acts without my permission more often than I'd like. But surely you didn't call this meeting just to show me your beautiful family." "No. I called it to find out if Marco's operating independently or with your blessing." Raphael's voice was cold. "Because the attack on the hospital, the mercenaries, the coordinated strikes on my properties, that takes planning and money. Your family's money. Marco has his own accounts. Not $2 million worth." Raphael slid a folder across the table. "I've been tracking the money. It traces back to accounts connected to your organization's shipping operations." Antonio opened the folder, scanning the documents with practiced efficiency. His expression never changed, but Elena saw his jaw tighten almost imperceptibly. "I see," he said finally. "And you think I authorized this?" "I think Marco had access to resources he shouldn't have. Whether you gave them to him or he took them, that's your internal problem. But it became my problem when he used them to try to kill my family." Antonio set down the folder carefully. "If, and I'm not saying it's true, but if Marco did act without authorization, what would you consider appropriate resolution?" "Marco steps back, publicly and permanently. He issues a formal apology to my organization and pays restitution for the damage his actions caused." Raphael's voice was steel. "And you guarantee it never happens again?" "And if I can't guarantee that, then I handle Marco myself. And we both know how that ends." The two men stared at each other across the table. Elena held Sofia close, watching the power play unfold. This was a negotiation, but it was also a threat. Raphael was offering Antonio a chance to save face by controlling his grandson, or face the consequences of a war neither of them wanted. Finally, Antonio smiled. "You've gotten bold, Raphael. I remember when you first started in this business. You were careful, deferential to your elders. I was younger then, and I didn't have as much to protect." Raphael glanced at Elena. "Things change." "They do indeed, Basim." Antonio stood. "I'll speak with Marco. If what you say is true, and I'm not conceding that it is, then he will face consequences, family consequences. That should be sufficient. It better be. Because if he makes another move against me or mine, our friendship ends." Raphael's voice was quiet but absolutely certain. "And you know what comes next." Antonio nodded slowly. "Understood. Give me 48 hours. He left with his bodyguards. The moment the door closed, Vincent emerged from the back room where he'd been monitoring the conversation. "He knew," Vincent said flatly. "He absolutely knew what Marco was doing." "I know." Raphael poured himself a drink. "But he's smart enough to recognize when the cost is too high. He'll rein Marco in, probably remove him from any position of power. That solves our immediate problem." "What about Danny Morelli?" Elena asked. "He's not part of Antonio's organization." "No, but Antonio has influence over Sal's crew. If we implement your plan, go public with Caleb's frame-up of Michael, Antonio can help sell it as justice served rather than weakness." Raphael sat down heavily. "It's all about narrative. We need to control the story." The next 24 hours were a whirlwind of activity. Raphael's legal team compiled every piece of evidence showing how Caleb had framed Michael Morelli. Vincent reached out to journalists with reputations for exposing corruption. Catherine worked with Elena to craft a statement from Michael's perspective. A dying man finally vindicated, but too late to get back the years stolen from him. By the time it hit the news, it was a perfect storm. Caleb Voss hadn't just been corrupt. He'd destroyed innocent lives for personal gain. Michael Morelli became the face of prosecutorial misconduct, a sympathetic figure whose tragedy highlighted everything wrong with the system. Danny Morelli showed up at Raphael's office 3 days later. Elena wasn't supposed to be there. She was supposed to be at the safe house, recovering and caring for Sophia. But Catherine had called, said Raphael wanted her opinion on something, and Elena had come despite her body's protest that she should still be in bed. Danny sat in the waiting room looking smaller than his photo suggested, young, angry, grief-stricken. When Raphael called him in, Elena followed, Catherine at her side. Danny looked up, saw Elena holding Sophia, and his expression crumpled. "I didn't know," he said immediately. "I didn't know they were going to go after a pregnant woman. I was so angry about Michael, and when they said you were involved, I believed them." "Who's they?" Raphael's voice was carefully neutral. "Marco Morelli's people. They said you helped Caleb frame Michael, that you'd done it to eliminate competition." Danny's hands shook. "I wanted revenge. I wanted everyone who hurt my brother to suffer. And now?" Elena asked quietly. "Now Michael's dying in a hospital bed, finally free, but barely alive long enough to enjoy it. And I nearly killed a baby for nothing." Danny met her eyes. "I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I'm sorry." Elena studied him, saw genuine remorse, genuine grief, saw a kid who'd made terrible choices because someone had weaponized his pain. "Marco played you," she said. "He fed you lies to make you do his dirty work. You were a weapon, not a partner. I know that now." Danny looked at Raphael. "I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm here to say I'm done. No more threats, no more moves against your family. I just want to spend what time Michael has left with him." Raphael was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Okay. But Danny, if you come at us again, for any reason, there won't be a third chance." "I understand." Danny stood, moving toward the door. Then he paused, looking back at Sophia. "She's beautiful. I'm glad she's okay." He left. Elena sagged against Catherine, exhausted from standing for too long. "That was the right call," Catherine said quietly, letting him walk. "Was it?" Raphael looked troubled. "Vincent thinks I'm being soft." "But Vincent thinks everyone's a threat," Elena corrected. "But Danny was telling the truth. I could see it." "So could I." Raphael pulled her close. "Come on. You need to rest before you tear your stitches." They made it back to the safe house just as Sophia started crying for her evening feeding. Elena settled into the rocking chair in the nursery, her body aching but her mind strangely calm. 3 weeks ago, she'd been Elena Voss, a translator married to a man she didn't love, trapped in a life she couldn't escape. Now she was Elena Moretti, mother to Sophia, partner to a man who'd burned the city down to save her, and apparently a strategist in an organization she barely understood. The change should have terrified her. Instead, it felt like waking up. "You're thinking too loud," Raphael said from the doorway. "Just processing." Elena looked up at him. "This is my life now. Really, my life. Not something temporary, not something I can walk away from." "Do you want to walk away?" "No." The answer came easily. "But I need to understand it better. All of it. How the organization works, who the players are, what the rules actually mean." She adjusted Sophia against her shoulder. "Catherine's been teaching me, but I need more. I need to be useful, not just protected." Raphael crossed to her, kneeling beside the rocking chair. "You're already useful. You've made better strategic calls in the last week than some of my advisors have made in years." "Then make it official. Give me a role. Let me help." Elena met his eyes. "I can't just sit here and wait while you fight wars on my behalf. That's not who I am." "I know," Raphael smiled. "I've been thinking about that, actually. We need someone to handle intelligence analysis. Someone smart enough to see patterns, fluent enough in multiple languages to work with international contacts, and ruthless enough to make hard calls." "You're offering me a job." "I'm offering you a partnership in everything." He took her hand. "If you want it." Elena thought about that. About choosing this life deliberately instead of stumbling into it. About becoming someone powerful enough that no one could ever hurt her the way Caleb had. About building something with Raphael that was more than just survival. "I want it," she said finally, "but on one condition. Name it." "Sophia comes first. Always. No matter what's happening with the organization, no matter what crisis is unfolding, she is the priority. Elena's voice was firm. I won't sacrifice her childhood for power. Deal, Raphael kissed her softly. Though for the record, I was never going to ask you to. Outside, Chicago settled into evening, unaware that its underworld had just shifted again. Unaware that a woman who'd walked into an ER dying had just accepted a crown she didn't know she'd been offered. Elena Moretti rocked her daughter and planned her future, and for the first time in years felt like she was exactly where she belonged. 3 months later, Elena sat in what used to be a storage room and was now her office, staring at surveillance footage that made her stomach turn. Sophia slept in a bassinet beside the desk, one tiny fist curled against her cheek, oblivious to the fact that her mother was watching someone die. Not literally, not yet. But the man on screen, Thomas Berkeley, one of Raphael's oldest business partners, had maybe 48 hours before his own stupidity killed him. You're sure about this? Vincent stood in the doorway, arms crossed. He'd been skeptical when Raphael had given Elena an actual role in the organization, but 3 months of her catching things he'd missed had grudgingly earned his respect. I'm sure. Elena rewound the footage, pointing at the timestamp. He meets with the same woman every Thursday at the same coffee shop. Always pays cash. Always sits with his back to the camera. Could be an affair. Could be. Except she works for the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. Elena pulled up another window showing the woman's ID badge, captured when she'd entered the federal building downtown. Agent Sarah Chen specializes in money laundering investigations. Vincent cursed softly. How long has this been going on? 6 weeks that I can verify, probably longer. Elena's fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling up financial records. And look at this. Berkeley's been moving money through accounts that don't match our usual patterns. Small amounts, nothing that would trigger automatic flags, but consistent, like he's testing the system. Testing it for what? For weaknesses, for the FBI. Elena leaned back, rubbing her eyes. She'd been up since 4 when Sophia decided sleep was optional. He's building a case, Vincent, feeding them information slowly so they can build something solid before they move. We need to tell Raphael. I know, but I wanted to be sure first. Elena looked at the frozen image of Thomas Berkeley, a man she'd met twice at business dinners, who'd brought Sophia a stuffed elephant when she was born. He's been with Raphael for 15 years. This is going to hurt. Better hurt than federal prison. Vincent pulled out his phone. I'll set up a meeting for tonight. Can you compile everything you have? Already done. Elena gestured to a thick folder on her desk. Photos, financial records, communication logs. It's all there. Vincent picked up the folder, flipping through it with growing appreciation. You're thorough. I'll give you that. I learned from the best. Elena smiled slightly. Catherine taught me to assume everyone's lying until proven otherwise. Paranoid but effective. In this business, paranoid keeps you breathing. Vincent paused at the door. For what it's worth, you were right. About Peter, about Danny, about reading people's motivations. Raphael made a good call bringing you in. It was the closest thing to a compliment Vincent had ever given her. Elena felt absurdly pleased. After he left, she spent an hour documenting everything she'd found, building a timeline that would make it impossible for Raphael to doubt her conclusions. She hated this part, the moment when suspicion became certainty, when someone's betrayal stopped being theoretical and became actionable. Sophia woke up crying, hungry and indignant. Elena scooped her up, settling into the chair by the window to nurse. Outside, snow was starting to fall, early for November, but not unheard of in Chicago. The safe house looked almost peaceful under its white blanket, like something from a postcard instead of a fortress. Your mama's about to ruin someone's life, Elena murmured to Sophia. Well, he ruined it himself. I'm just pointing it out. Sophia didn't care. She nursed contentedly, making the little grunting sounds that Elena had learned meant she was happy. 3 months old and already developing a personality, stubborn, impatient, absolutely certain the world should revolve around her schedule, like her father. The thought made Elena smile. Raphael had adapted to fatherhood with the same intensity he brought to everything else. He'd learned to change diapers with military precision, could soothe Sophia's crying with specific combinations of rocking and humming, and had installed enough security around her nursery to protect a head of state, but he still struggled with the quiet moments, the times when there was nothing to do but hold her and watch her sleep. Elena would find him standing over Sophia's crib at 2 in the morning, just staring, like he couldn't quite believe she was real. "She's not going anywhere," Elena had told him once. "I know, but I keep thinking about how close we came to losing her." Raphael's voice had been rough. "How if you hadn't gotten to that cab, hadn't made it to the hospital?" "But I did. We both did." Elena had pulled him away from the crib, back to bed, back to the present, instead of the nightmare of what if. "You can't protect her from everything, Raphael. Eventually she's going to fall down, get her feelings hurt, make mistakes. I can try." That was the problem. Raphael thought he could control everything through sheer force of will and careful planning. Elena was learning that some things, like babies, like betrayal, like the future, refused to be controlled no matter how hard you tried. Catherine knocked on the office door around 3, carrying coffee and looking concerned. "Vincent said you found something." "Thomas Berkeley's talking to the FBI." Elena shifted Sophia to her shoulder, patting her back. 6 weeks of meetings, maybe more. He's feeding them information about our financial operations." Catherine took the folder Elena offered, reading through it with professional detachment. "This is solid work. How did you catch it?" "I was reviewing security footage from our legitimate businesses, looking for patterns. Notice Berkeley kept showing up at this one coffee shop even though it's nowhere near his usual routes. Started tracking his movements, ran facial recognition on everyone he met with, and found Agent Chen." Elena accepted the coffee gratefully. "Once I knew what to look for, the rest fell into place." "You've gotten good at this." "I've had good teachers." Elena watched Sophia's eyes drift closed, milk-drunk and content. "And I'm motivated. Every person who betrays this organization is someone who might try to hurt my daughter. That focuses the mind." Catherine studied her for a moment. "You've changed. 3 months ago you could barely walk. Now you're running counterintelligence operations from a home office." 3 months ago, I was surviving. Now I'm living." Elena set down her coffee. "There's a difference." "There is. And you're handling it better than most people would." Catherine settled into the chair across from her. "But I want to make sure you're okay. Really okay. You went through trauma, major surgery, and now you're raising a baby while working for organized crime. That's a lot." "I'm fine." "Elena." "I am. I'm tired. I'm still healing. And sometimes I have nightmares about those men dragging me into that SUV. But I'm fine." Elena met her eyes. "I'm doing what I need to do to make sure Sophia grows up safe. If that means I have to be harder than I used to be, more suspicious, less trusting, then that's what I'll be. Just don't lose yourself in the process." "I won't. I have Raphael for that." Elena smiled. "He reminds me I'm human when I start thinking like a machine." "And you remind him he's human when he starts thinking like a weapon." Catherine stood. "It's a good partnership, rare in this world." The meeting that night took place in Raphael's study, a room Elena had come to associate with difficult decisions. Raphael sat behind his desk, Vincent and Marcus flanking him. Elena took the chair across from him, the folder between them like evidence at a trial. "Show me," Raphael said. Elena walked him through it. The surveillance footage, the financial irregularities, the FBI connection. She kept her voice steady and professional, presenting facts without editorializing. Raphael's expression never changed, but she saw his knuckles go white where he gripped the desk. When she finished, the room was silent except for the ticking of an antique clock on the mantel. 15 years. Raphael's voice was barely above a whisper. "He's been with me for 15 years. I trusted him with everything." "I know." Elena wanted to reach across the desk, take his hand, offer comfort, but this wasn't the time. This was business. "I'm sorry." "Don't be sorry. You did your job." Raphael stood, pacing to the window. "Marcus, bring him in. Tonight. I want to hear this from him." "Boss, if he's really working with the FBI, then he's already told them everything that matters. Bringing him in won't change that." Raphael turned back. "But I want to look him in the eye when he explains why he sold us out." They brought Thomas Berkeley to the safe house at midnight. He came willingly, probably thinking it was a routine meeting, probably not noticing the extra security or the way Marcus stayed too close to be casual. Elena watched from the office via security feed, Sophia asleep in her arms. She'd offered to attend in person, but Raphael had shaken his head. "This one's on me," he'd said. "You did the hard part. I'll finish it." Berkeley looked nervous when they sat him down in the study. He was 63, gray-haired, and distinguished, the kind of man who could have been a banker or a professor if he'd chosen a different path. "Raphael, what's this about?" His voice was steady, but Elena could see the fear in his eyes. "It's late. I was sleeping." "Were you sleeping 6 weeks ago when you met with FBI agent Sarah Chen?" Raphael's voice was cold. "Or 2 weeks ago when you handed her copies of our financial records?" The color drained from Berkeley's face. "I don't know what you're talking about." Raphael slid a photograph across the desk. Berkeley and Agent Chen sitting in the coffee shop, clearly mid-conversation. "Try again." Berkeley's hand shook as he picked up the photo. For a long moment he said nothing, then quietly, "How did you find out?" "Does it matter?" "I suppose not." Berkeley set down the photo carefully. "Are you going to kill me?" "That depends on why you did it." Raphael leaned back in his chair. 15 years, Thomas. 15 years of loyalty, of trust, of working together. What happened? "My son." Berkeley's voice cracked. "David. He got caught up in something stupid. Drugs, wrong crowd. The FBI had him cold. 20 years minimum, maybe more." He looked up. "They offered me a deal. Information in exchange for immunity for David. I couldn't let my son go to prison for 20 years, Raphael. I couldn't." Elena felt her chest tighten. Another desperate parent, another impossible choice. The pattern was starting to feel inevitable. "So you sold us out to save him?" "I fed them financial information. Nothing operational, nothing that would get anyone killed, just numbers, accounts, paper trails." Berkeley's voice was pleading now. I thought I could give them enough to satisfy the deal without really hurting anyone." "You thought wrong." Raphael's voice was ice. "Those financial records connect to legitimate businesses, to politicians we've paid, to operations across 3 states. You didn't just hand them numbers, Thomas. You handed them a roadmap to dismantle everything we've built." "I know. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Berkeley was crying now, years of tension and guilt pouring out. "I didn't see another way." Raphael stood, walking around the desk. "You could have come to me, told me about David, asked for help. I would have made the charges disappear, would have done it gladly for someone who'd been loyal to me for 15 years. I didn't think—" "No, you didn't think. You panicked, and you made a choice that's going to cost both of us." Raphael's voice was sad now, not angry. "The FBI has what you gave them. They're building a case. And when they move, people are going to get hurt. Good people who trusted you." "What are you going to do?" Raphael was quiet for a long moment. Elena held her breath, watching through the screen. "You're going to fix this," Raphael said finally. "You're going to go back to Agent Chen and tell her you want out, that the guilt is eating you alive, that you can't do it anymore. And then you're going to feed her exactly what I tell you to feed her." Berkeley looked up, hope and fear warring in his expression. "You want me to be a double agent?" "I want you to undo the damage you've done, or at least try." Raphael sat on the edge of his desk. "You give them bad information, misdirect their investigation, buy us time to move assets and cover tracks. Do that, and maybe you get to live long enough to see your son graduate from whatever program keeps him out of prison. And if I refuse, then I give Agent Chen a different kind of information about David's involvement in things much worse than what he's currently charged with, things that would put him away for life." Raphael's smile was cold. "Your choice, Thomas. Save yourself and your son by helping me, or lose everything trying to protect secrets you've already sold." It wasn't really a choice. Berkeley knew it, Raphael knew it, and watching from the office, Elena knew it too. "Okay," Berkeley whispered. "Okay, I'll do it." They spent the next 2 hours planning exactly what information Berkeley would feed to the FBI. Vincent took point, his mind working through the implications of each false lead, each misdirection. Marcus documented everything, building a timeline that would keep Berkeley on script. Elena finally put Sophia down around 2 a.m., her arms aching from holding her sleeping daughter for so long. When she came back to the office, Raphael was there, staring at security footage of Berkeley being escorted out by Marcus. "You handled that better than I would have," Elena said quietly, settling into his lap. "You would have shot him?" "I would have wanted to." She rested her head on his shoulder. "He betrayed you to save his son. I understand that impulse now. I'd burn the world down to protect Sophia." "I know you would. So would I." Raphael's arms tightened around her. "That's what makes this so hard. I can't even hate him properly because I understand exactly why he did it. But you can't let it go unpunished. No. In this business, weakness gets you killed. If people think they can betray me and walk away, the whole thing falls apart." He sighed, sounding exhausted. "So Thomas becomes an object lesson, a warning to everyone else. And if the FBI figures out he's feeding them bad information, then he goes to prison with his son, and we're no worse off than we are now." Raphael stood, lifting Elena with him. "Come on, it's late, and you haven't slept more than 4 hours straight in 3 months." They made it to the bedroom before Raphael's phone buzzed. He checked it, frowned, and typed a quick response. "What is it?" "Antonio Morelli wants a meeting. Tomorrow morning, his territory." Raphael set the phone down. "Says it's urgent." Elena felt her stomach drop. "Marco?" "Probably. Antonio's been keeping him on a short leash, but the kid's ambitious. Wouldn't surprise me if he's making moves again." Raphael pulled her close. "We'll deal with it tomorrow. Tonight, let's just be parents instead of criminals." Morning came too early, announced by Sophia's hungry wails. Elena fed her while Raphael showered, then traded off so she could make herself presentable. Catherine arrived at 8 with fresh intelligence. "Marco Morelli was spotted at a construction site on the south side yesterday," she reported, spreading photos across the kitchen table. "It's supposed to be neutral territory, but he had 15 guys with him, all armed." "Staking a claim." Raphael studied the photos. "That site's been in dispute for months. 3 different organizations think they have rights to it. And now Marco's making it 4. Vincent appeared with coffee and a grim expression. "Word on the street is he's building alliances, small crews who are tired of the current power structure, who think the old guard is too cautious." "He's building an army." Elena shifted Sophia to her other shoulder. "How many people would follow him if he made a real move?" "Hard to say. Maybe 50, maybe more." Vincent sat down heavily. "Antonio's meeting is probably about containment. He wants to stop this before it becomes a full war." The meeting was set for a warehouse in Bridgeport, Antonio's stronghold. Raphael insisted Elena stay behind, but she'd expected that. What he didn't expect was her counteroffer. "I want to listen in. Full audio, live feed." Elena's voice was firm. "If this goes bad, I need to know immediately so I can move Sophia somewhere safer." Raphael looked like he wanted to argue, but Catherine nodded. "She's right. If there's going to be a war, we need advance warning." They set up the feed in Elena's office. Catherine stayed with her, both women monitoring the audio while Sophia napped in her bassinet. Elena heard Raphael's footsteps, the opening of the warehouse door, Antonio's greeting. "Thank you for coming, Raphael." Antonio's voice was strained. "We have a problem. Marco, and others." Antonio sighed. "My grandson has been more active than I realized. He's made agreements with people I specifically forbade him from associating with. Russians, Raphael. The Volkov organization." Elena and Catherine exchanged alarmed looks. The Volkovs were notorious, violent, unpredictable, and absolutely ruthless. If Marco had allied with them, this was about to get much worse. "How deep is the alliance?" Raphael's voice was carefully controlled. "Deep enough that they're moving weapons through his territory. Deep enough that he's promised them a cut of whatever he takes from you." Antonio's voice was heavy. "I've tried to stop him. I've threatened, I've cut off his resources, I've isolated him from family operations. Nothing works." "Then you need to do what you should have done 3 months ago." "Kill my own grandson?" Antonio's voice rose. "He's family, Raphael. Blood. I can't just—" "Yes, you can. And you will, if you want to stop this from becoming a war that destroys both our organizations." Raphael's voice was hard. "Marco made his choice. He chose the Volkovs over family, chose ambition over loyalty. That's on him, not you. Silence stretched for a long moment. Then Antonio spoke, his voice barely a whisper. I can't do it. I can't kill my own blood. Then I will. Raphael's words were simple, final. But understand, Antonio, if I handle Marco, it's not going to be quiet or peaceful. It's going to send a message that no one, family or not, comes after me in mines without consequences. Please, Antonio's voice cracked. Give me one more chance. Let me try to bring him in to make him see reason. You have 24 hours. After that, Marco becomes my problem to solve. Raphael's footsteps echoed. And Antonio? If you warn him, if you help him run, our friendship ends, permanently. The audio cut out. Elena sat back, processing what she'd heard. The Volkovs, Marco's rebellion, Antonio's inability to control his own family. It was all spiraling towards something terrible. This is going to explode, Catherine said quietly. Antonio won't kill Marco. He'll try to hide him, protect him. And then Raphael will have to go through the whole family to get to him. We need leverage. Elena's mind was already working. Something that forces Antonio's hand, makes him choose his organization over his grandson. Like what? Elena thought about it, pieces clicking into place. Marco's alliance with the Volkovs. That's the weak point. If we can prove that Marco's not just expanding territory, but actually betraying Chicago families to outsiders, Antonio will have to act. Family honor demands it. You want to expose Marco as a traitor. I want to make it impossible for Antonio to protect him without looking weak himself. Elena pulled up her computer, fingers flying across the keyboard. The Volkovs are moving weapons through Marco's territory. That means paperwork, manifests, customs documents. If we can intercept those, prove the connection publicly, Antonio has to disown Marco or lose face with every other family in Chicago. Catherine smiled, fierce and approving. That's brilliant and vicious. That's necessary. Elena was already composing a message to Vincent. Can you reach out to our contacts at the ports? I need to know when the next Volkov shipment is coming through. They spent the next 6 hours building the case. Vincent's port contacts confirmed a weapons shipment scheduled for 2 days out. Catherine's surveillance teams documented Marco's men preparing a warehouse to receive the cargo. Elena pulled together communications that showed Marco had promised the Volkovs permanent access to Chicago's smuggling routes in exchange for their support. By the time Raphael returned to the safe house, Elena had a complete dossier ready. We have a better option than killing Marco, she said without preamble. Raphael listened while she laid out the plan. His expression shifted from skepticism to consideration to something that looked like pride. You want to destroy him without firing a shot. I want to make it so Antonio has no choice but to do it himself, or publicly exile Marco, which amounts to the same thing in this world. Elena handed him the folder. Marco's betraying every Chicago family by bringing in the Volkovs. That's unforgivable. If we expose it, Antonio has to respond or lose all credibility. And if Antonio still refuses, then we give this information to every other family in Chicago and let them handle it. The Volkovs are everyone's problem, not just ours. Elena met his eyes. Either way, Marco's finished. We just control how it happens. Raphael flipped through the dossier, his expression unreadable. Then he looked up at Vincent, who'd followed him in. What do you think? I think your girlfriend is scarier than half the people on our payroll, Vincent said. And I mean that as a compliment. This is smart, surgical, and it keeps our hands relatively clean. Marcus, who'd been standing in the doorway, shrugged. I prefer direct action, but I can appreciate elegant solutions. This works. Raphael turned back to Elena. You've been doing this for 3 months, and you're already thinking 10 steps ahead. I had good teachers and strong motivation. Elena glanced at Sophia, still sleeping peacefully. I told you I wanted to be useful. This is how. Useful. Raphael laughed, the sound rough but genuine. Elena, you're not useful. You're essential. He pulled her close, careful not to disturb Sophia between them. We're doing this your way. Vincent, set up a meeting with the other families. I want them to see this information before Antonio has a chance to spin it. The meeting happened the next evening in a neutral location, a private room in a restaurant that catered to people who valued discretion. 5 families sent representatives, all of them powerful, all of them wary of the Volkovs' expansion into Chicago. Raphael presented the evidence with Elena's dossier as backup. Photographs of Marco with known Volkov operatives. Communication logs showing the weapons deal. Customs documents that proved the Volkovs were using Marco's territory as a permanent base. The reaction was immediate and explosive. Accusations flew, alliances shifted, and by the end of the night, every family in Chicago had agreed on one thing. Marco Moretti was a traitor who needed to be removed. Antonio wasn't at the meeting. Raphael had deliberately excluded him, forcing him to hear about his grandson's betrayal secondhand. It was cruel, but effective. The call came at midnight. Antonio's voice was hollow, defeated. "You've destroyed him." "No, Marco destroyed himself." Raphael's voice was firm. "I just made sure everyone knew about it. The families are demanding his head. I have no choice." "I know. I'm sorry it came to this." "Are you?" Antonio's laugh was bitter. "You got exactly what you wanted. Marco gone, the Volkovs blocked, and you keep your hands clean. What I wanted was for you to control your grandson before this became necessary. You couldn't do that, so I did what I had to do." Raphael paused. "For what it's worth, I take no pleasure in this." Liar. But Antonio's voice had no heat. "It's done. Marco will be handled within 48 hours. The families will have their justice." The line went dead. Raphael set down the phone and looked at Elena, who'd been listening to the whole conversation. "How do you feel?" he asked. Elena thought about that. She'd just orchestrated a man's death. Not directly, not with her own hands, but just as surely as if she'd pulled the trigger herself. She should feel guilty, horrified, sickened. Instead, she felt satisfied. "I feel like I protected my family," she said finally. "Marco was going to start a war. Now he's not. That's what matters." "You're okay with what we just did?" "I'm okay with keeping Sophia safe. If that means destroying people who threaten her, then yes, I'm okay with it." Elena met his eyes steadily. "Does that make me a bad person?" "It makes you a survivor and a strategist." Raphael pulled her close. "I knew you were smart. I didn't realize you'd be this good at this." "I learned from the best." Elena rested her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat. "And I'm still learning. There's so much I don't know yet." "You'll learn. You're a natural." Raphael kissed the top of her head. "My brilliant, ruthless partner." From the nursery, Sophia started crying. Elena went to get her, lifting her daughter into her arms and breathing in that particular baby smell that was somehow both milk and innocence. "Your mama just saved a lot of lives tonight," she whispered to Sophia, "including yours. Someday you'll understand what that means." Sophia didn't understand anything except that she was hungry. Elena settled into the rocking chair, nursing her daughter while snow fell outside the window. 3 months ago, she'd been a victim. Now she was something else entirely, something harder, colder, more dangerous than she'd ever imagined becoming. The woman who'd walked into that ER bleeding and terrified wouldn't recognize the woman she was now. But that woman wouldn't have survived, wouldn't have been able to protect Sophia, wouldn't have been able to stand beside Raphael as an equal instead of a dependent. Elena Moretti looked at her sleeping daughter and made a silent promise. No one would ever make her a victim again. She would learn every trick, every strategy, every ruthless tactic it took to survive in this world, and anyone who threatened her family would learn exactly how dangerous a mother's love could be. Outside, Chicago slept uneasily, unaware that its underworld had just shifted again, unaware that the woman in the fortress, rocking her baby while snow fell, had just become one of the most dangerous people in the city. And she was only getting started. Marco Morelli's body was found 3 days later in the Chicago River, wrapped in chains and weighted down with concrete blocks that hadn't been heavy enough. The news called it a mob execution. The families called it justice. Elena called it Tuesday. She was feeding Sophia when Raphael showed her the news report, his expression carefully neutral. "Antonio did it himself," he said quietly. Vincent confirmed it. No intermediaries, no hired guns. Antonio pulled the trigger on his own grandson. Elena shifted Sophia to her other side, processing that information. How is he? Destroyed. Vincent says he's aged 10 years and 3 days. Raphael sat beside her, one hand resting on her knee. He's stepping back from active leadership, handing most operations over to his nephew, keeping only ceremonial authority. Because of Marco? Because he can't trust his own judgment anymore. He chose family over business, and it nearly started a war. Now he's overcorrecting. Raphael's voice was sad. It's the end of an era, really. Antonio Morelli ran the South Side for 40 years. Now he's just a broken old man waiting to die. Elena looked at Sophia, peaceful and content, and tried to imagine a future where she'd have to make that choice, where protecting her organization meant destroying her own child. The thought made her physically ill. I don't want that to be us, she said quietly. 20 years from now, I don't want to be choosing between Sophia and survival. Then we build something different, something where she doesn't have to be part of this world unless she chooses it. Raphael pulled Elena close, careful of Sophia between them. That's what I've been thinking about. An exit strategy. A way to make enough money, build enough legitimate power that we can walk away clean. Is that possible? I don't know, but I want to try. He kissed her forehead. For her. For us. I don't want Sophia growing up thinking this is the only option. The conversation stayed with Elena over the following weeks. She'd adapted to this life with frightening ease, the violence, the strategy, the constant calculation of threat and opportunity. But she didn't want it to be permanent, didn't want Sophia's childhood to be armed guards and safe houses and learning to read people for signs of betrayal. She started researching quietly, using her new position to access information about how other organizations had transitioned from criminal enterprises to legitimate businesses. Money laundering in reverse, taking dirty money and building clean empires. It was complicated, dangerous, and would take years, but it was possible. Catherine found her in the office one night, surrounded by financial documents and legal briefs, Sophia asleep in her bassinet. What are you working on? Catherine asked, setting down coffee. Raphael's exit strategy. He wants to go legitimate, build something Sophia can inherit without inheriting the violence. Elena rubbed her eyes. I'm trying to figure out how. Catherine studied the documents. This is ambitious. You're talking about restructuring the entire organization. I'm talking about building a second organization alongside the first. Legitimate businesses that generate real profit that can eventually replace the criminal operations. Elena pulled up a spreadsheet. Real estate, tech investments, consulting firms, things that look clean on paper because they are clean. And when the criminal side starts losing money because you're shifting resources to legitimate operations, what happens to the people who depend on that income? It was the question Elena had been wrestling with. Raphael's organization employed hundreds of people directly and supported thousands more indirectly. You couldn't just shut that down without consequences. We transition them, offer jobs in the legitimate businesses, help them build new skills, create pathways out of criminal work for anyone who wants them. Elena met Catherine's eyes. I know it sounds idealistic, but Raphael's right. This can't be forever. Eventually someone's going to make a mistake, or the FBI is going to get lucky, or one betrayal too many is going to bring everything down. Better to exit on our terms than wait for disaster. You really believe you can do this? I believe I have to try, for Sophia. Elena looked at her sleeping daughter. I don't want her growing up thinking violence is the answer to every problem. That betrayal is expected, that you can't trust anyone. I want better for her. Catherine was quiet for a long moment. Then she smiled. You know what? I think you might actually pull this off. You're stubborn enough and smart enough to make it work. I'll need help. You have it, whatever you need. Catherine pulled up a chair. Let's start planning. They worked through the night, building a framework that would take years to implement, but could eventually free Raphael's entire organization from its criminal foundations. It was ambitious and possibly impossible, but Elena had learned that impossible just meant difficult with better planning. The next challenge came from an unexpected direction. Thomas Berkeley had been feeding carefully curated information to the FBI for 2 months, misdirecting their investigation while Raphael's people moved assets and covered tracks. It had been working beautifully until Berkeley made a mistake. He mentioned a property that didn't exist in the false narrative they'd built for him. Agent Sarah Chen noticed immediately. She was too good at her job not to. Within 24 hours, the FBI had figured out that Berkeley was compromised, and within 48 hours, they'd arrested him for obstruction of justice. Vincent broke the news during a morning meeting, his expression grim. Berkeley's in federal custody. They picked him up last night, and he's already talking. Not about us, at least not yet, but about the deal he made, the false information, everything. Raphael's jaw tightened. How much damage? Hard to say. The false leads bought us time, and we used it well. Most of our critical operations are insulated now, but Berkeley knows things, and if they pressure him hard enough, he'll give us up to save his son. I know. Raphael stood, pacing. Do we have any leverage on Agent Chen? Nothing that wouldn't make things worse. She's clean, dedicated, and now she's angry that someone made her look foolish. Vincent pulled up a file. But we do have one option. Berkeley's son, David. The kid who started this whole thing. Elena felt her stomach drop. What about him? He's in a halfway house, part of the deal Berkeley negotiated. If something happened to David, if he violated the terms of his release, the whole agreement falls apart. Berkeley loses his leverage, and the FBI loses their cooperative witness. You want to kill a kid to shut up his father? Elena's voice was sharp. I want to create a situation where Berkeley has to choose between his son's freedom and cooperating with the FBI. Vincent's voice was patient. We don't have to kill David. We just have to make sure he screws up badly enough to violate his release terms. That's still destroying a kid's life. The kid's choices already destroyed his father's life and nearly destroyed ours. I'm not losing sleep over giving him what he deserves. Vincent looked at Raphael. This is the cleanest option. It neutralizes Berkeley without creating more bodies. Raphael was quiet, his expression unreadable. Elena could see him working through the calculation, weighing consequences, measuring costs against benefits. No, he said finally. Vincent blinked. Boss, I said no. We're not going after David. Raphael's voice was firm. Berkeley made his choices. His son made his choices. But we don't survive this business by making enemies of everyone. If we go after David, we prove to every parent in this organization that their kids aren't safe. That's not the message I want to send. Then what do we do about Berkeley? We contain the damage, move any operations he had direct knowledge of, change account structures, reroute communications, make it so that even if he tells them everything, it's already outdated information. Raphael looked at Elena. What do you think? She was surprised he was asking, but she answered honestly. I think Vincent's option is effective but short-sighted. We'd gain immediate security at the cost of long-term loyalty. People need to know their families are off limits. Even when those families threaten our security? Especially then. Because if we start targeting families, we become the thing people fear most. And fear only generates loyalty until something scarier comes along. Elena met his eyes. We need to be better than that. For Sophia's sake, if nothing else. Raphael nodded slowly. Okay, we do it Elena's way. Vincent, start the containment protocols. I want everything Berkeley touched cleaned and restructured within 72 hours. Vincent looked like he wanted to argue, but he nodded and left to make calls. Elena waited until they were alone before speaking. Thank you for not going after David. I didn't do it for you. I did it because you were right. Raphael pulled her close. We can't build something better if we keep using the same brutal tactics. Sometimes mercy is stronger than violence. Catherine would say that's naive. Catherine survived this long by being ruthless, but she's also alone, isolated, trusting no one. Raphael's voice was quiet. I don't want that for us. For Sophia. I want her to grow up knowing that family means something, that loyalty isn't just fear dressed up in nicer clothes. It was the most hopeful Elena had heard him sound in months. The FBI's investigation stalled without Berkeley's cooperation. Agent Chen tried to build a case from the information she had, but without insider testimony, it was all circumstantial. 3 months later, the case was quietly closed for lack of evidence. Thomas Berkeley served 18 months for obstruction of justice. His son David completed his program and got a job at a landscaping company, staying clean and out of trouble. Elena heard that Berkeley wrote to Raphael from prison once, a letter that simply said, "Thank you for my son." Raphael never responded, but he didn't have to. The message had been sent and received. By the time Sophia turned 1, Elena had built a comprehensive transition plan that would move 60% of Raphael's operations into legitimate businesses within 5 years. It was aggressive, risky, and required buy-in from every senior member of the organization. The meeting to present the plan took place in a conference room that looked like it belonged to a Fortune 500 company, not a criminal enterprise. Vincent, Marcus, Catherine, and 5 other senior lieutenants sat around the table while Elena presented, Sophia playing quietly in a portable crib in the corner. "We're not talking about going straight overnight," Elena explained, walking them through the financial projections. "We're talking about a gradual transition that protects everyone's interests while building sustainable legal income streams." "And the people who don't want to transition?" Marcus asked. "We've got soldiers who've been doing this their whole lives. They're not going to become accountants or real estate agents." "Then they stay in the criminal operations until those operations become unprofitable or too risky to maintain. No one's being forced out." Elena pulled up another slide. "But we make the legitimate path attractive. Better pay, better benefits, retirement accounts, health insurance, things people can't get working illegal jobs." Vincent studied the numbers. "This requires a massive upfront investment. Where's that money coming from?" "From operations we're phasing out. Gambling, low-level drug distribution, protection rackets. They're high-risk, low-reward operations that generate headlines and federal attention." Elena met his eyes. "We keep the sophisticated operations, money laundering through legitimate businesses, high-level consulting, strategic investments, things that look legal because we make them legal." "You want us to become venture capitalists?" Vincent's tone was skeptical, but intrigued. "I want us to become what we've been pretending to be, successful business people who happen to have complicated pasts." Elena clicked to the final slide. "In 5 years, Raphael Moretti becomes a legitimate businessman with legitimate power. His daughter inherits an empire that can't be seized by the FBI or destroyed by rivals. That's the endgame." The room was silent. Elena could feel them processing, calculating their own futures against the vision she was presenting. Finally, Catherine spoke. "I'm in. I've been looking for an exit strategy for years. This is the best option I've seen." "I'm in too," Marcus said. "I'm getting too old for street work anyway. Might as well learn how to wear a suit that doesn't hide a gun." One by one, the others agreed. Vincent was last, his expression thoughtful. 5 years is a long time. A lot can go wrong. "A lot can go right," Elena countered. "We're not guaranteed success, but we're guaranteed failure if we keep doing the same things and hoping for different results." Vincent looked at Raphael, who'd been silent throughout the presentation. "What do you think, boss?" "I think my wife just gave us a future worth fighting for." Raphael stood, moving to where Elena stood by the projector. "I think we'd be fools not to try." Wife, not girlfriend, not partner. Wife. Elena glanced at her left hand, still bare, and felt Raphael squeeze her fingers. "We'll make it official soon," he murmured. "When things are calmer." Things were never calm, but they were getting better. The transition plan rolled out over the following months with surprising smoothness. The legitimate businesses thrived, generating real profit that could be reported on taxes and used to build credit, reputation, power. There were setbacks. 2 soldiers refused to transition and had to be quietly retired with generous severance packages. A real estate deal went bad and cost them $3 million. Agent Sarah Chen started sniffing around their new ventures, looking for the criminal connections she was certain existed. But mostly, it worked. A year into the transition, Raphael proposed properly. Not in a restaurant or some elaborate production, but at 3 a.m. when Sophia had finally gone back to sleep after screaming for an hour with gas pains. "Marry me," he said, settling back into bed beside Elena. She was so exhausted she thought she'd hallucinated it. "What?" "Marry me. Actually marry me, legally and permanently. I want you to be my wife in every sense that matters." Raphael propped himself up on one elbow. "I know we're basically already married. We live together, raise a child together, run an empire together. But I want it official. I want Sophia to see her parents committed to each other, not just cohabitating out of convenience." Elena studied his face in the dim light. "You're serious." "Completely. I should have asked a year ago, but things kept happening and I kept putting it off. Then tonight, listening to Sophia scream and watching you comfort her even though you're exhausted and healing and dealing with everything else, I realized I was being an idiot. You're already my wife in every way that matters. Let's make it legal. That's possibly the least romantic proposal in history. I know. I'm terrible at this. Raphael smiled. But I love you, Elena. I've loved you since you walked into my office 3 years ago and told me I was pronouncing Russian names wrong. I loved you when you were bleeding out in the hospital. I loved you when you figured out Thomas Berkeley was betraying us. I love you right now, exhausted and covered in baby spit up, still the most brilliant person I know. Elena felt tears prick her eyes. You're getting better at this. Is that a yes? That's a yes. She pulled him close, kissing him deeply. But I want a real wedding, not some courthouse thing. A real wedding with Sophia in a tiny dress, and our friends watching, and a celebration that says we made it. Whatever you want, as long as you marry me. They were married 3 months later in a small ceremony at the safe house, surrounded by people who'd become family over the past 2 years. Catherine stood as Elena's maid of honor. Vincent and Marcus flanked Raphael. Sophia, 16 months old and already showing signs of her father's stubbornness, toddled down the aisle dropping flower petals and occasionally stopping to examine interesting ones. Antonio Morelli sent a gift, a silver frame with a note that read, "Congratulations on finding something worth protecting." He didn't attend, but Elena hadn't expected him to. He'd become a ghost, haunted by what he'd done to his grandson. The real surprise came from Danny Morelli. He showed up at the reception uninvited, causing Marcus to reach for his gun until Raphael waved him off. "I'm not here to cause trouble," Danny said, hands raised. "I just wanted to say congratulations and to thank you." "For what?" Elena asked. "Michael died last month, but his last 6 months were good. He got to be out of prison, got to see his name cleared, got to know that what happened to him mattered." Danny's voice was rough. "You didn't have to do that. You could have just killed me and moved on. Instead, you gave my brother dignity in his last days. I won't forget that." He left before anyone could respond, disappearing into the Chicago night. Raphael pulled Elena close as they watched him go. "You saved his life, you know, by finding that third option when everyone else just saw violence." "I saved a lot of lives, including ours." Elena looked up at him. "That's what I'm good at, seeing possibilities other people miss." Among other things, Raphael kissed her softly. "Dance with me, Mrs. Moretti." They danced while Sophia played with Catherine, and the organization that had nearly destroyed them transformed into something that might actually give their daughter a future. 2 years later, Elena stood in a conference room in a downtown office building, presenting to a board of directors that included no criminals and several legitimate business leaders. The Moretti Group had officially gone public, offering shares in their real estate and consulting divisions. It was the final step in the transition plan. If this worked, if investors bought in, if the market accepted them as a legitimate corporation, then the criminal operations could be phased out entirely. The presentation went flawlessly. Elena had practiced it 100 times, anticipated every question, prepared responses that were truthful without being incriminating. By the time she finished, 3 investors were ready to commit capital. Raphael watched from the back of the room, Sophia on his hip. Their daughter was almost 4 now, bright and curious and completely unaware that her parents had built an empire on violence before transforming it into something she could be proud of. After the meeting, they walked through Chicago together. A family, not a criminal organization. Just parents taking their daughter to the park, buying ice cream, living a normal life that had once seemed impossible. "We did it," Raphael said quietly as Sophia ran ahead to the playground. 5 years, and we actually did it. Not done yet. The criminal operations are still running, still generating income. Elena watched Sophia climb onto the slide. But they're small enough now that we can close them without destroying everything we've built. How long until we're completely clean? Another year, maybe 2. The gambling operations can be sold off to other organizations. The money laundering will phase out as we no longer need to clean criminal income. Elena leaned against him. By the time Sophia starts first grade, we'll be exactly what we're pretending to be. Legitimate business people. And then? Then we live. We raise our daughter, we grow the business, we build something that lasts. Elena smiled. Maybe have another kid if you're feeling ambitious? Raphael laughed. One is already terrifying me, but ask me again in a year. They were quiet for a moment, watching Sophia play with other children who had no idea who her parents were or what they'd done to build this life. Do you ever regret it? Raphael asked. The choices you made, the person you became? Elena thought about that. About the woman who'd stumbled into an ER bleeding and terrified. About the desperation that had made her give Raphael's name. About every violent choice, every calculated betrayal, every ruthless decision that had brought her to this moment. No, she said finally. Because those choices saved my life, saved Sophia's life, saved us. She turned to face him. I'm not proud of everything we've done, but I'm not ashamed either. We survived, Raphael. In a world designed to destroy us, we survived and built something better. That's not nothing. That's everything. Elena watched Sophia slide down, laughing with pure joy. Look at her. She's happy. She's safe. She doesn't know fear. That's what we gave her. That's worth every terrible choice we made along the way. Raphael pulled her close. I love you, Elena Moretti, for your brilliance, your ruthlessness, your capacity to see hope where everyone else sees ash. I love you too, for believing I could be more than a victim, for giving me the tools to become powerful instead of broken. Elena kissed him softly. We're going to be okay. All of us. And they were. The Moretti Group continued to grow, expanding into new markets and building legitimate wealth. The criminal operations were quietly shuttered over the next 18 months, assets distributed to other organizations in exchange for peace and goodwill. By Sophia's 5th birthday, there was nothing illegal left to hide. Raphael and Elena became fixtures in Chicago's business community. They donated to charities, attended galas, built a foundation that provided opportunities for people trying to leave criminal life behind. It was deliberate reputation laundering, but it was also genuine. They knew better than anyone how hard it was to escape that world, and they wanted to make it easier for others. Catherine stayed on as head of security for the legitimate businesses, applying her paranoid instincts to corporate espionage and competitive intelligence. Vincent became chief financial officer, his talent for moving money now used for growth instead of concealment. Marcus retired to Florida with enough money to live comfortably for 3 lifetimes. Thomas Berkeley got out of prison and disappeared. Elena heard he'd moved to Oregon, started a landscaping business with his son. She'd sent him money once, anonymously, enough to help them get established. Raphael had raised an eyebrow when he found out, but he hadn't stopped her. Everyone deserves a second chance, she'd said, even people who betray us. Is that what we're teaching Sophia? Forgiveness? I'm teaching her that mercy isn't weakness, that power means having choices, and sometimes the strongest choice is not to destroy someone when you could. Elena had smiled. Besides, Berkeley's already destroyed. He lost everything because he couldn't trust the people he worked for. That's punishment enough. Antonio Morelli died in his sleep 2 years after Marco's death. The funeral was small, quiet, attended mostly by people who remembered him as he'd been, not what he'd become. Raphael went, paid his respects, and came home looking older. He was a good man once, Raphael said that night. Before Marco, before the betrayals, before everything fell apart. He taught me a lot about this business. What happened to him could happen to us, Elena said quietly, if we let it. If we choose power over family, if we let ambition corrupt our judgment. It won't, Raphael pulled her close. Because we have you to keep us honest, to remind us what actually matters. I'm not infallible. No, but you're wise enough to know it. He kissed her forehead. That's the difference. On Sophia's 7th birthday, Elena received an unexpected visitor. Agent Sarah Chen showed up at their home, not the safe house anymore, but an actual house in a good neighborhood with a yard and neighbors who waved, with a file folder and a tired expression. Mrs. Moretti, thank you for seeing me. Chen sat in the living room, declining coffee. I'll be brief. I've been investigating your family for 5 years, looking for the criminal connections I was certain existed. And, Elena kept her voice neutral, and I found nothing, because there's nothing to find. You've legitimately transitioned to legal business operations. Chen set the folder on the coffee table. This is my official report. It concludes that the Moretti Group, while founded by individuals with questionable pasts, currently operates within legal boundaries. Elena didn't touch the folder. Why are you telling me this? Because I want you to know I'm closing the investigation. You won. You got away with it. Chen's voice was frustrated but resigned. But I also want you to know I'll be watching. If you slip, if you go back to old patterns, I'll be there. We won't slip. Elena met her eyes. We built this for our daughter. We are not going to destroy it by being stupid. Chen studied her for a long moment. I believe you. That's what frustrates me most. You actually mean it. She stood. Congratulations, Mrs. Moretti. You're officially boring. After she left, Raphael emerged from where he'd been listening in the kitchen. Boring, he repeated. We're boring now. We're safe now. Elena pulled him close. There's a difference. They threw Sophia the birthday party she'd been asking for. A dozen kids from school, cake, presents, chaos. Elena watched her daughter blow out candles and make a wish, surrounded by friends who saw her as just Sophia, not the daughter of criminals turned legitimate business people. That night, after Sophia was asleep and the house was clean, Raphael and Elena sat on their back porch watching the stars. Do you think she'll ever know? Raphael asked. About what we were? What we did? Someday, when she's old enough to understand nuance, to see that people are complicated and choices aren't always clear. Elena leaned against him. But not yet. Let her be innocent a little longer. And when we tell her the truth, that we made terrible choices to survive terrible circumstances, that we hurt people and destroyed lives in the name of protection, but also that we tried to build something better, tried to give her options we never had. Elena looked up at the stars. We tell her that people can change if they want it badly enough, that redemption is possible, even for people who've done unforgivable things. Do you believe that? That we're redeemed? Elena thought about the woman she'd been, scared, trapped, bleeding in an ER. Thought about the woman she'd become, powerful, strategic, capable of ruthless calculation when necessary. Thought about all the choices in between, all the violence and mercy, all the destruction and creation. I believe we're trying, she said finally, and I believe that's enough. We're not the same people we were. We're not pretending the past didn't happen, but we're building a future where Sophia doesn't have to repeat our mistakes. That's redemption enough for me. Raphael was quiet for a long time. Then he said, I'm glad I answered the phone that night, when the hospital called. I'm glad I gave them your name. Even knowing what it would cost? What you'd become. Especially knowing that. Elena turned to face him. You asked me once if I regretted the choices I made. I don't, because those choices led to this, to Sophia sleeping safely in her room, to a life where we get to be boring, to a future where our daughter can be anything she wants because we cleared the path for her. We did it together. We did. Elena kissed him softly, and we'll keep doing it, building, protecting, making sure the empire we built doesn't crush the people we love. Years passed. Sophia grew up smart and stubborn, showing her mother's strategic mind and her father's protective instincts. She went to good schools, made friends, lived the normal childhood her parents had fought so hard to give her. When she was 16, Elena finally told her the full story. Not the sanitized version, not the simplified narrative, but the truth. About Caleb's betrayal, about the men who'd tried to kill her, about Raphael storming into the hospital and burning the city down to save them both. About the choices they'd made, terrible, violent, unforgivable choices, to survive and protect each other. Sophia listened without interrupting. When Elena finished, her daughter was quiet for a long time. So you were a criminal, Sophia said finally. Yes. And Dad too. Yes. But you're not anymore. No, we're not. Elena met her daughter's eyes. We transitioned to legitimate business because we wanted better for you. We wanted you to have choices, opportunities, a future that wasn't built on violence. Sophia processed that. Did you kill people? Not directly, but I made decisions that led to people dying. So did your father. Elena's voice was steady. We're not proud of that, but we're not going to lie about it either. And if you had to do it again, make those same choices? Elena thought about that, about the woman bleeding in an ER, about the tiny baby fighting for every breath. about all the moments when violence had been the only option that led to survival. "I'd make them again," she said honestly, "because those choices saved your life, and I'll never regret that." Sophia nodded slowly. "Okay. Okay? I mean, it's a lot, and I need time to process it, but I get it. You did what you had to do to protect me." Sophia smiled slightly. "Kind of badass, actually. My mom's a reformed criminal mastermind." Elena laughed, relief washing over her. "Is that what I am?" "That's exactly what you are. Own it." Sophia hugged her tightly. "I love you, Mom, even knowing all of this, maybe especially knowing all of this." When Raphael came home that night, Elena told him how it had gone. He'd been worried Sophia would hate them, would be disgusted by their past, would see them as monsters. "She called me badass," Elena reported, and said she needed time to process, but she understood. "That's my girl." Raphael's relief was palpable. Smart, forgiving, and apparently okay with having criminal parents. "Reform criminal parents," Elena corrected. "There's a difference." "Is there?" "We did terrible things, Elena. We destroyed lives, ended futures, chose survival over mercy more times than I can count." Raphael sat down heavily. "Sometimes I wonder if we deserve the peace we've found." "Deserve has nothing to do with it. We built this peace. We earned it through hard work and careful choices and refusing to let our past define our future." Elena took his hand. "We're not perfect. We never will be. But we're trying. And that counts for something." "Does it? Does trying to be better make up for all the harm we caused?" Elena thought about that. About Thomas Berkeley and his son, about Danny Morelli and his dead brother, about all the lives touched by their choices. "No," she said honestly, "nothing makes up for that. But we can't undo the past. All we can do is try to make the future better. For Sophia, for the people who work for us, for everyone affected by our decisions." She squeezed his hand. "That's what the foundation is for. What the transition plan was for. We're trying to balance the scales, even knowing we'll never get them perfectly even. And if that's not enough, then we keep trying anyway, because the alternative is giving up, and we didn't survive everything we survived just to give up now." Elena pulled him close. "We're going to be okay, Raphael, all of us. We're going to live long lives, watch Sophia grow up, maybe even have grandchildren someday. And we're going to do it knowing we weren't perfect, but we were human, and that's enough." The Moretti Foundation grew into one of Chicago's most respected charitable organizations, providing education, job training, and support services for people trying to leave criminal life. It was Elena's particular project, her way of creating pathways out for people who found themselves where she'd once been, trapped, desperate, seeing violence as the only option. Raphael focused on growing the legitimate business empire, building relationships with other companies, creating opportunities for the people who'd transitioned with them from the criminal operations. He was good at it. His strategic mind and ability to read people serving him well in boardrooms instead of backrooms. Together, they built something that lasted, something Sophia could be proud of, something that proved people could change if they wanted it badly enough. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Elena and Raphael returned to Chicago Memorial Hospital, not as patients or criminals, but as donors. They'd funded a new wing for high-risk pregnancies, state-of-the-art equipment that would save babies like Sophia, who came into the world too early and fighting for every breath. Dr. Webb attended the dedication ceremony, older now but still sharp. He shook Raphael's hand warmly. "I remember the night you stormed into my ER," he said. "Thought you were going to kill someone if we didn't save her." "I would have," Raphael admitted. "But you did save her, both of them." "They saved themselves. I just helped." Webb looked at Elena, at Sophia standing between her parents. "You've built something remarkable here. This wing is going to save a lot of lives." "That's the idea," Elena said quietly. "We can't undo the damage we caused, but we can try to create more good than harm going forward. That's all any of us can do." Webb smiled. "Congratulations. On everything." As they walked through the hospital afterward, Sophia between them holding both their hands, Elena thought about the woman who'd stumbled through these same doors 10 years ago. Bleeding, terrified, certain she was going to die. That woman wouldn't recognize Elena Moretti now. wouldn't believe that survival was possible, that power could be built from vulnerability, that terrible choices could lead to beautiful futures. But it was all true. Elena had learned that redemption wasn't about erasing the past. It was about acknowledging it, learning from it, and building something better despite it. She would never stop being the woman who'd made ruthless calculations to protect her family. But she was also the woman who'd built pathways to help others avoid making those same terrible choices. Both could be true. Both were true. "Mom?" Sophia looked up at her. "Why are you crying?" Elena wiped her eyes, not having realized tears were falling. "I'm just thinking about how lucky we are, how easily this could have gone differently." "But it didn't." Sophia squeezed her hand. "You survived. We all survived. And now we get to help other people survive too." Out of the mouths of babes. Raphael pulled them both close, and they stood in the hospital lobby where it had all started, where Elena had given his name and changed both their lives forever. "We made it," he said quietly. "We did," Elena agreed. And they had. Through violence and mercy, through destruction and creation, through terrible choices and their consequences, they'd built something worth keeping, an empire that started in blood but ended in hope. A family that chose each other every day, not out of necessity, but out of love. That night, back in their home, their real home, not a safe house or a fortress, but a place where they could simply be, Elena stood in Sophia's doorway watching her daughter sleep. 10 years ago, she'd promised this tiny baby that no one would ever hurt her the way Elena had been hurt. That she would have choices, safety, a future unmarred by violence. She'd kept that promise. Not perfectly, not without cost, but she'd kept it. And in doing so, she had learned the truth that had been waiting all along, that love was the most dangerous weapon of all. That a mother's fierce protection could reshape empires. That redemption wasn't given, it was built, slowly and carefully, from the ruins of everything you'd destroyed, Par. Elena Moretti had walked into an ER a victim and walked out a survivor. She'd become a strategist, a partner, a force to be reckoned with. She'd learned to be ruthless when necessary and merciful when possible. She'd built an empire and then transformed it into something her daughter could inherit with pride. She wasn't perfect. She never would be. But she was enough. And in the end, that was the only truth that mattered. The city lights sparkled beyond the window, Chicago settling into another night. Somewhere out there, other people were making impossible choices, surviving terrible circumstances, building futures from ash and hope. Elena understood them now, understood that people were complicated, that morality wasn't black and white, that sometimes the only way forward was through darkness. But she also understood that darkness didn't have to be permanent, that change was possible, that even people who'd done unforgivable things could build something worth forgiving. She closed Sophia's door softly and went to find her husband, the man who'd answered when she had no one left, the man who'd helped her become powerful instead of broken. Together, they'd built an empire. Together, they'd destroyed it and rebuilt it into something better. Together, they would keep building. For Sophia, for themselves, for everyone who came after. Because that was what love did. It didn't erase the past. It didn't make terrible choices acceptable. It didn't guarantee happy endings. But it gave you a reason to keep trying, to be better tomorrow than you were today, to build futures from the ruins of your worst moments. And sometimes, if you were very lucky and very stubborn and very willing to do the hard work of change, that was enough.